Hey guys, tonight we're going to try something a little different. We're not just visiting a time and place, we're going to attempt to navigate one of the most complex, awkward, and beautifully frustrating dating scenes in human history, the imperial court of Heian, Japan. Imagine trying to find love when you can't see the other person's face. Your DMs are handwritten poems delivered by a courier who might be judging you. And your profile picture is basically the sleeve of your robe. Let's be honest, most of us, myself included, would probably get ghosted before our first poem on scented paper even arrived. The social anxiety is real. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Your support truly means the world. And while you're at it, I'd love to know where you're tuning in from. Drop your city and the current time in the comments below. It's always a quiet thrill to see how far these stories travel. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The air in your chambers is heavy and sweet. It's a scent you've carefully crafted, a personal blend of aloes wooded clove, designed to permeate the very fabric of your silk robes. It's your signature, your calling card. Out on the veranda, the polished wooden floors reflect the pale moonlight, and beyond, the meticulously raked gravel of the garden looks like a frozen silver sea. You are a young nobleman in Heian-Gyo, the capital of peace and tranquility in the 10th century. And you are, for all intents and purposes, terminally bored. Your life is a languid procession of ritual ceremonies and aesthetic pursuits. But lately, a new pursuit has begun to occupy your thoughts. Whispers have reached you, carried by ladies minus and minus, waiting on gossiping courtiers, of a certain lady in the western wing of the palace. They say her calligraphy is like flowing water, her taste in kimono colors is sublime, and her skill on the code of the Japanese zither can make even the most hardened ministers weep. Her name is a melody on the tongue, but her face, you have no idea what she looks like, and you may never know. This is the first and most crucial rule of your reputation is everything. It is not built on bravery in battle or the size of your rice fields, though those things certainly don't hurt. No, your currency is something far more delicate. It is miyabi or courtly refinement. It is the undeniable proof of your sensitivity, your education, and your impeccable taste. This is the mainstream, foundational knowledge of your era. Every choice you make is a public statement. The color of the paper you write on, the specific knot you use to tie a letter, the flower you choose to attach to it, even the way you fold a fan, it is all scrutinized, judged, and catalogued by a society with very little else to do. You rise and walk towards your writing desk. On it sits a slab of inkstone, a brush with a handle of lacquered bamboo, and stacks of exquisite colored paper. To make a move, to even hint at your interest in this unseen lady, is to put your entire social standing on the line. One clumsy brushstroke, one poorly chosen word in a poem, one shade of purple that clashes with the current season, and you won't just be rejected, you will become a joke. A cautionary tale told behind rustling silk fans in shadowed corridors. Your carefully cultivated image as a man of taste will be shattered. This is where a rather unique and somewhat niche cultural concept comes into play. Mono no aware. It's a term that's famously difficult to translate, but it's a kind of gentle, beautiful sadness. It's the pathos of things, the bittersweet awareness that everything the cherry blossoms, a love affair, life itself is transient. A man who understands this, who can express this subtle melancholy in his art and poetry, is considered deep and profoundly attractive. A man who is too brash, too loud, too happy, is seen as a bit of a simpleton. So your task isn't just to be charming, it's to be charmingly melancholic. You have to prove you can feel the subtle heartbreak of a falling leaf on an autumn evening. As you sit contemplating the perfect opening line, you're aware of the immense pressure. Were all the men of your class true poetic geniuses? Were they all born with this innate sensitivity? It's a question historians still debate. Many scholars argue that much of this poetic and artistic expression was highly formulaic. There were guidebooks, accepted themes, and established ways of saying things. The genius lay not in inventing something entirely new, but in adding a subtle, personal twist to a well-known form. It was less about spontaneous passion and more about demonstrating that you had mastered the intricate rules of the game with effortless grace. So, here you are. The moon is high. The city is quiet, save for the distant call of a night bird. Your reputation is a fragile, shimmering bubble. One wrong move and it pops. The lady in the western wing knows nothing of your existence yet, but she, and everyone she knows, is ready to be your harshest critic. The first step is not about winning her heart, it's about proving you're worthy of even entering the arena. But writing a letter blind feels like a fool's errand. A poem, no matter how exquisite, is a shot in the dark. You need a target, an image, something to anchor your carefully chosen words. You mean to see her. Well, see is a very strong word in your world. What you're planning is an act known as kaimami, which literally means peeking through a gap in a fence. It sounds a bit creepy, and let's be honest, it kind of is. But in Heian society, it's been romanticized into a high-stakes art form. It is the only socially acceptable way for a man to catch a glimpse of a respectable woman outside of his own family. A few days pass in a haze of feigned nonchalance. You attend a poetry gathering, meticulously comparing shades of ink. You practice your flute, letting the notes drift out over the garden, hoping they might be carried by the wind in the right direction. Then, a carefully placed bribe to a low-ranking court servant pays off. The whisper comes back the lady and her retinue will be making a trip to the Kamo shrine in 3 days' time to offer prayers. This is your chance. The day arrives clear and bright. You dress with an almost painful level of attention to detail. Your layered robes the juni high-toe for men, though less than 12 layers, are a symphony of carefully coordinated colors, subtly hinting at the season. A pale lilac over a deep violet, the edges perfectly aligned at your collar and cuffs. Your attendant, a young man almost as nervous as you are, fusses with the drape of your sleeve. You look less like a man on his way to discreetly observe someone and more like a man preparing for a formal audience with the emperor. But that's the point. If you are seen, you must look effortlessly perfect, as if you just happened to be taking a reflective stroll. You position yourself along the route, not too close to the shrine entrance, that would be too obvious, but at a bend in the road, partially concealed by a weeping willow. And then you wait. The sun climbs higher, dust kicked up by passing ox skirt scoots your pristine silk trousers. You feel a bead of sweat trickle down your back, threatening to disrupt the perfect, starched posture you're holding. This is the unglamorous side of Heian romance, the sheer mind-numbing boredom of waiting. This is a cold, hard fact of your time that the epic poems tend to gloss over. The world moves at the speed of an ox, which is to say, incredibly slowly. An outing that might take 20 minutes by car today would be an all-day affair. Patience isn't just a virtue, it's a basic survival skill. Then you hear it, the slow, rhythmic creak of wooden wheels and the low calls of the ox driver. An entourage comes into view. You straighten up, every muscle tense. At the center is a single, grand carrot. It's not ostentatious, but the quality is unmistakable. The dark lacquer shines. The bamboo blinds SUD are impossibly fine and hang in perfect, straight lines. As it draws nearer, you can smell it, not the lady's personal incense, but the expensive, fragrant woods the carriage itself is made from. Your heart is hammering against your ribs. You must be careful. A direct stare is an act of aggression, a vulgar display. You lower your gaze, pretending to be examining a petal on a nearby shrub. You will look only for a second through the screen of willow branches. The carriage is almost beside you now. The blinds are down, of course, shielding the occupants from the world. But at the bottom, they are slightly raised, perhaps to let in a breeze. And there, you see it. It's not her face. You know it wouldn't be. Instead, you see the edge of a sleeve. But what a sleeve! It's a cascade of layered silks, a palette of colors so daring and yet so harmonious it makes you catch your breath. A deep crimson melts into a pale cherry blossom pink, edged with a sliver of golden yellow, like the setting sun. The fabric is of the finest quality, catching the light in a soft, rich sheen. It tells you everything and nothing. It tells you the rumors are true, her taste is impeccable. It tells you she is bold, yet understands tradition. It is a work of art, displayed for a fleeting moment. Just as your eyes trace the elegant line of the fabric, you see a hand pale, slender raise a cypress minus would fan to adjust the blind, and for a fraction of a second, you see the dark, lustrous line of her hair against her neck. Then it's gone. The carriage creaks past, leaving you with nothing but a cloud of dust and a lingering, phantom scent of fine silk and subtle perfume. You stand frozen for a long moment, the image seared into your mind. This brings us to a point of contention among modern historians. Was this glimpse, this kaimami, truly a spontaneous, romantic act of espionage? Or was it a carefully orchestrated performance? Some scholars argue that these accidental viewings were often anything but. A noble family, aware of a potential suitor's interest, might arrange such an outing specifically to provide a preview. The lady would be instructed to display her most beautiful kimono sleeve, to make a subtle, graceful gesture at just the right moment. It was a form of advertising, a silent audition where the woman could demonstrate her cultivated elegance without breaking the strict rules of seclusion. Was she performing for you? Did she know you were there? You'll likely never know, and the uncertainty is both maddening and intoxicating. You turn to leave, your mind racing. The glimpse was a success. You haven't seen her, not really, but you've seen her artistry, a fragment of her soul expressed in silken color. It's more than enough. Now, you have your inspiration. Now you can write the poem. The image of that sleeve, that fleeting glimpse of color and grace, is now burned into your consciousness. It's your muse, your focal point. But you can't just scribble down a poem and have it tossed over her wall. That's the kind of thing a brutish provincial warrior might do. You, a man of Heian minuscule, must follow the protocol. And the most critical piece of protocol is your messenger. You don't just need a delivery boy, you need a diplomat, a spy, and a wingman all rolled into one. Your entire romantic enterprise rests on the shoulders of this intermediary. Choosing the right person is an art in itself. It can't be someone of too high a rank. Sending a fellow nobleman would be presumptuous and awkward. It can't be a common field hand. Their rough manners and unkempt appearance would reflect poorly on you. You need someone in the middle, a trusted personal attendant, a well-spoken page, or perhaps the son of a lesser official who serves your family. This person must be a master of social nuance. They need to be observant enough to gauge the atmosphere of the lady's household, sharp enough to interpret a subtle cue from her lady's waiting, and above all, impeccably discreet. You summon your most promising candidate, a young man named Corteda. Hes, the son of your father's steward, educated enough to read and write, but still firmly in a service role. Hes, quick-witted and, most importantly, has a knack for being unobtrusive. You sit him down and explain the mission. His eyes widen slightly. He understands the gravity of the situation. A successful mission could mean a handsome reward and a step up for his family. A failure would reflect on you, but it would be catastrophic for him. He would be the one to face the immediate, silent scorn of the lady's household. This is a fundamental aspect of your society. Most direct interactions, especially between genders and different social strata, are buffered by intermediaries. It's a system designed to avoid direct confrontation and potential loss of face. You don't ask for promotion yourself, you have a powerful patron hint at it on your behalf. You don't reject a suitor to their face, you have a lady waiting inform their messenger that her mistress has a sudden, debilitating headache that might last for several months. Your messenger is your avatar in the world. Now, you have to prepare him. You go over the details. He is not to barge in. He is to approach the gates of the lady's residence and speak to the guards, presenting himself as a messenger from your household. He will then likely be met by one of the junior attendants. His clothes must be immaculate, not as fine as yours, but clean and well-mended. His speech must be humble yet articulate. He is to present the letter not with a clumsy hand, but on a spray of flowering cherry blossoms, as it is currently spring. The choice of flower is, of course, critical. A plum blossom would have been for late winter, a wisteria for early summer. A cherry blossom is perfect for now, symbolizing fleeting beauty and new beginnings. Here's a quirky little detail about this process. Your messenger wasn't just a mailman. Often, he was expected to wait, and wait, and wait. he wouldn't just drop off the letter and leave. He would be led to a waiting room or a veranda, offered a simple refreshment, and then left to sit for hours. This was part of the test. The lady and her attendants would be observing him from behind screens. How does he sit? Is he fidgety? Does he look bored or impatient? They are judging you, the sender, by the comportment of your servant. If your messenger is calm, patient, and respectful, it suggests that you are a man of substance and good breeding. If he is restless and uncouth, it implies you are as well. The debate among cultural historians here's whether the messenger was also an active participant in seduction. Some historical accounts and literary tales, like the famous tale of Genji, suggest that a particularly charming and handsome messenger could do a lot to plead his master's case. He might exchange witty banter with the ladies minus waiting, subtly dropping compliments about you, describing your poetic talents or your melancholy air. A good messenger could essentially act as a PR agent, building you up before the letter was even open. Conversely, a clumsy or arrogant messenger could sink your chances instantly, no matter how beautiful your poem was. Some sources even hint at romances blooming between the messenger and one of the ladies minus and minus waiting, a risky side minus plot to your main story. So as you hand your precious, carefully folded letter to Koritata, you're not just entrusting him with a piece of paper. You're entrusting him with your reputation. You watch him go, his posture straight, the spray of cherry blossoms held carefully in his hand. He is a walking, talking extension of your will, your taste, and your ambition. Now he has to get past the gatekeepers, charm the attendants, and survive the long silent judgment. The success of your first move is entirely out of your hands. He carries your hopes on a bed of pink petals. Now we come to the centerpiece of your entire effort, the letter itself. This isn't any mail dashed off into minutes. This is a work of art, a multi-minus sensory experience, and every single element is a message. You've been at your writing desk for hours, the moonlight having long given way to the soft glow of an oil lamp. The pressure is immense. This first letter, known as a fumi, is your opening move in a silent, poetic chess match. First, the paper. You would never, ever use plain white paper for a personal letter, especially not one with romantic intentions. That's for official documents or for monks copying sutras. Your choice of paper is the first word of your sentence. You have a collection of exquisite papers, dyed with pigments from flowers, berries, and bark. Since its spring and your glimpse of her was defined by that crimson minus and minus blossom sleeve, you select a sheet of very pale pink paper, so delicate it's almost translucent. But a single color is too simple, too obvious. You choose another sheet, a slightly deeper, warmer rose, and carefully layer it underneath so just a hint of the darker color shows at the edges. This technique, called kasani no irome or layered colors, is the same principle used in the robes you both wear. It shows you were observant. It shows you remember. Next, the ink. You grind the ink stick on the stone yourself, adding a drop of water, controlling the thickness and blackness. It must be a deep, rich black, but not clumpy. The quality of your ink speaks of your patience and attention to detail. Then, the most crucial part, the poem itself. This must be a waka, a specific 31 syllable form. 无减七减无减七减七. You can't just write whatever you feel. Your feelings must be filtered through the strict, elegant container of the waka. Your theme is obvious, the sleeve you saw, but you cannot be direct. Saying I saw your sleeve and it looked nice would be the poetic equivalent of a caveman's grunt. You must use metaphor and allusion. You must connect your personal feeling to a grander, natural image. After much thought, your brush hovers over the paper. You write, your characters flowing in a cursive, elegant script. A shaky, hesitant hand implies a weak personality. A bold, messy hand implies a lack of refinement. Your script must be confident yet graceful. The poem might read something like this. Haru no yo no the spring night. Yome wa yanashi the darkness as a shan. You know Hannah for the plum blossoms. IRO new summity sent her stool in its color. So Denizio, your Tisushan moved it to your sleeve. You've cleverly mixed up your flower metaphors a bit, plum blossoms for scent. but the color alluding to the cherry pink you saw it shows complexity. You've said you saw it, but you've framed it in a way that suggests it was so beautiful it transcended the darkness, a light in itself. You don't sign your name. She will know who it's from by the messenger. Anonymity is part of the mystique. But you're not done. The poem is written, but how you present it is just as important. You cannot simply fold it in half. There are specific, elaborate folding techniques for letters, and they vary depending on the occasion and your relationship with the recipient. For a first letter, you might use a formal, intricate knot minus-like fold. You take a long, thin strip of paper and weave it into a complex knot, tucking the letter inside. Then, as planned, you attach it to a living branch. You chose a sprig from a cherry tree in your garden, one with a few perfect, half-open blossoms and a single, tender green leaf. This is a classic touch. The living flower is a symbol of sincerity and the freshness of your feelings. A cut flower would be, well, a little dead. Here we encounter a wonderfully bizarre niche piece of Heian etiquette, the concept of mourning minus after letters, or Kinyuji in Fumi. While that applies more specifically to letters sent after a couple has spent the night together, the principle of the next day follow minus up is paramount in all correspondence. The speed and quality of a reply, or in your case, the initial letter after a sighting, is critical. You saw her yesterday, the letter must arrive today. To wait any longer would imply that the vision of first leave did not inspire you enough to act immediately. It would be an insult. Finally, the send. You take the folded letter and hold it over the smoke of your personal incense burner for just a moment. Not so long that it becomes overpowering, but just enough for your signature blend of aloes wooden clove to cling to the paper. When she opens it, she will be met with a trifecta of sensory information: the visual beauty of the paper and calligraphy, the intellectual beauty of the poem, and the subtle, personal scent that is uniquely yours. Historians often wonder about the pressure of this. Was every nobleman a natural poet and artist? The consensus is almost certainly not. Just as today, some people are more gifted than others. It's highly probable that many men sought help. They might have consulted older, more experienced relatives, or even ghost writers, lesser-known poets or scholars, who could be commissioned to compose a suitably elegant verse for a fee. The authenticity of the poem was less important than its quality. The act of sending a beautiful object was the primary message. Whether you crafted it entirely yourself or were smart enough to outsource the job to a professional was a secondary concern. The goal was a flawless performance. And now your performance is ready. Folded, scented, and tied to a living branch, your letter is a silent ambassador for your taste, your heart, and your ambition. Corteda has been gone for what feels like an eternity. The sun, which was high in the sky when he left, now casts long, slanted shadows across your garden. You've tried to occupy yourself. You attempted to practice the flute, but your breath was unsteady. You picked up a scroll of Chinese poetry, but the characters swam before your eyes. Every gust of wind, every distant shout from the street makes you jump. You are experiencing the purest, most uncut form of social anxiety known to humanity, waiting for a reply in a world without instant messaging. There's no delivered receipt, no red checkmark, no 3 dots bubbling up to show she's typing a response. There is only silence. This agonizing wait is a core and often overlooked part of the Heian courtship process. It was a built-in feature of the system, not a bug. The deliberate slowness was a test of your sincerity and patience. An impatient man was a man of shallow feeling. A man who could wait with grace and composure was a man of depth. Of course, knowing this doesn't make it any easier. Your mind is a whirlwind of catastrophic possibilities. Did Corteda even make it there? What if his ox minus Scart threw a wheel? What if he was set upon by bandits? Unlikely in the capital. But your anxious mind isn't interested in statistics. Maybe the gods at her gate turned him away. Worse, maybe they let him in. And he is, at this very moment, making a fool of himself and by extension you. Is he slurping his tea? Is he staring blankly at the wall? Is he, heaven forbid, trying to make small talk? The hours scroll by. You find yourself pacing the length of your chambers, the silk of your robes whispering against the polished floorboards. This is the moment when the highly aestheticized world of courtly love grinds against the gritty reality of human emotion. The poetry, the layered colors, the scented paper, it's all a beautiful illusion. Underneath it is the raw, universal fear of rejection. You have made yourself vulnerable. You have sent a piece of your curated self out into the world, and you have no idea how it will be received. This is where a little minus known tidbit of Heian life comes in the role of divination and superstition. In an age of uncertainty, with medicine in its infancy and political fortunes shifting like sand, people at all levels of society relied heavily on omens, astrology, and fortune-minus telling. Before embarking on any important venture a journey, a new building project, or a romantic overture, it was common to consult a diviner, an omyoji. These masters of yin and yang would interpret signs, consult calendars for auspicious and inauspicious days, and give advice on the best course of action. It's highly likely that a nobleman in your position would have chosen the day to send the letter based on a diviner's recommendation. So now, as you wait, your mind might start replaying that consultation. Did the diviner say the direction of her house was auspicious today? Was there a warning about metal or water elements that you foolishly ignored? You might find yourself performing small, superstitious rituals. Perhaps you adjust a screen in your room to face a luckier direction. You might murmur a prayer to a specific deity known to favor lovers. This wasn't seen as silly, it was a practical way of trying to exert some control over a situation that was, in reality, completely out of your hands. That historical debate here revolves around the emotional reality of this waiting game. Were Heian aristocrats as cool and composed as they appear in their diaries and poems? Or was the entire culture a finely crafted mass, hiding roiling passions and anxieties? Many official texts and poems present a vision of elegant, melancholy patience. But reading between the lines of more personal documents, like the diaries of court ladies Nikki, such as the Pillow Book of Se Ishona Gon, or the Diary of Izumi Shikibu, reveals a different story. These texts are full of gossip, impatience, frustration, and keen psychological observation. They show that these were real people with real messy feelings. The ideal was calm detachment, but the reality was often a state of high emotional tension. They felt the agony of the wait just as keenly as anyone today waiting for a text back. As dusk begins to settle, painting the sky in shades of orange purple that you are far too stressed to appreciate, you see a figure approaching your gate. It's Koratata. HES walking slowly, his shoulders slumped. Your heart plummets. It's over before it even began. You failed. She rejected you. The humiliation is already washing over you. He enters your chambers and bows low, his face unreadable. You can't bring yourself to speak. You just stare at him, bracing for the bad news. He remains silent for a long moment, drawing out your agony. Then he looks up and a slow smile spreads across his face. From the sleeve of his robe he produces a small, folded piece of paper. It is a deep, rich violet, tied with a delicate knot, and attached to it is a single, fragrant wisteria blossom. She has replied, "The wait is over, the silence is broken." But a new form of anxiety immediately takes its place. What does it say? You take the letter from Koratada's hand. Your fingers, which you pride yourself on keeping steady during food practice, are trembling slightly. The object itself is a message before you even read the words. Your mind, trained from birth to decode these subtle signals, goes into overdrive. First, the paper. She chose a deep violet. This is a sophisticated, powerful color associated with the imperial family and the highest echelons of the aristocracy. It's also a color associated with wisteria, the flower of late spring and early summer, suggesting a forward look, a continuation. It's a confident choice, a response to your pale pink that doesn't just mimic it, but complements and deepens it. She is not a passive recipient. She is an active participant in this aesthetic dialogue. Chess meeting your move and raising the stakes. Then, the flower. She has attached a sprig of wisteria. This is brilliant. Your cherry blossom spoke of the fleeting beauty of a single moment. Her wisteria, which grows in long, trailing clusters, suggests something more enduring, something that unfolds over time. It's a poetic response that says, "I understand your sentiment, and I offer this one in return." It also demonstrates her impeccable sense of season. Cherry blossoms are fading, and wisteria is just beginning to bloom. She is telling you she is perfectly in tune with the natural world, a hallmark of true elegance. You carefully untie the knot. It's a different style from the one you used, more fluid and intricate. This is her first parry, just showing you her own dexterity and knowledge of convention. As you unfold the paper, a faint, clean fragrance rises to meet you. It's not a heavy, musky incense like the one you use. It's lighter, more full, perhaps a blend with sandalwood and jasmine. It's subtle, refined, and utterly different from yours. It's her olfactory signature. You now have another piece of the puzzle that is her personality. This is the central pillar of Heian communication. Everything is coded. A direct compliment would be considered clumsy and unsophisticated. The beauty of the exchange lies in its indirectness and the layers of meaning packed into these physical objects. The letter is a package of sensory data: the color for the eyes, the scent for the nose, the texture of the paper for the fingers, and finally the poem for the mind. You smooth the violet paper and your eyes fall upon the calligraphy. It is exactly as the rumors describe. The characters are delicate but assured, flowing across the page with a sense of energy and grace. This is perhaps the most intimate piece of information you have received yet. In a society where you may not see a person's face, their handwriting is considered the clearest window to their soul. A man's writing was expected to be strong and scholarly, perhaps leaning toward the angular Chinese style. A woman's writing was expected to be fluid, graceful, and expressive, using the softer, cursive Japanese script known as kana. Her kana is exquisite. It tells you she is highly educated and has spent countless hours practicing, a sign of a sheltered and privileged upbringing. Finally, you read the poem. It's a waka, a response to yours. Haru gas you am I the spring mist. Tetsuo miss you tet having risen and gone. Yuck you carry with a wild goose that leaves. Atofu Dizuki know now in the month of letters. Keoiko so kai kre its voice can at last be heard. Your heart gives a little jump. It's a masterpiece of layered meaning. On the surface, it's a standard seasonal poem about a wild goose. But you are the goose. Your voice, your poem has been heard now that the spring mist of anonymity has lifted slightly. The phrase month of letters Fu Dizuki is a clever pun. It's an old name for the 7th month, but here it literally means a month of correspondence. She is acknowledging your letter and inviting more. It's a yes. It's a green light, wrapped in the most elegant, indirect language possible. She hasn't said, I like you. Write me again. She has said, a wild goose has made a sound, and you understand perfectly. This brings us to a slightly unusual and fascinating aspect of this culture, the collective nature of reading these letters. You might think this is an intensely private moment, but it's likely not. As soon as Cortado arrived, he would have been debriefed. And now, as you decipher the poem, your most trusted attendants are probably gathered around you, offering their interpretations. The same thing would have happened on her end. When your letter arrived, she wouldn't have opened it alone in her room. She would have summoned her most clever and trusted ladies minus and minus waiting. They would have analyzed every detail together: the paper, the fold, your handwriting, the state of the flower branch, before even beginning to decode the poem. It was a team effort. Romance was a spectator sport. The historical debate here is about the true authorship of these poetic replies. Just as you might have gotten help composing your poem, a noble lady was even more likely to have done so. While she was certainly educated in poetry, her ladies minus and minus waiting were often chosen for their own intelligence and artistic talents. The reply you're holding could be her own work, the work of her most brilliant attendant, or a collaborative effort hashed out in a flurry of excited whispers behind a screen. Some scholars argue this makes the exchange less personal, while others contend it makes it richer, a product of a whole team of refined minds working together. In a way, you're not just courting her, you're courting her entire inner circle. You read the poem one more time, the violet paper cool against your skin. You have your answer. She is witty, she is tasteful, and she is interested. The game is afoot. The first exchange has been a success. Now, the real challenge begins. You have to sustain the conversation. The poetic conversation has begun. Letters are now flying back and forth between your residences, delivered by a slightly more confident curator. Each exchange is a delicate dance, a new puzzle to solve. You are learning the rhythm of her wit, the palette of her favorite papers, the seasonal flowers she prefers. But your communication is still limited to scent and paper. You crave another glimpse, a more substantial piece of evidence of the person behind the screen. And soon, another opportunity presents itself. Your network of informants, say few well-paid servants and gossipy low-level officials brings you news. The lady's family will be attending a festival at the 2-G temple. There will be music, ceremonies, and most importantly, a procession of carriages. This is a bigger, more public event than her trip to the Kamo shrine. The crowds will be thicker, but that also provides better cover. Your goal this time is not just to see the carriage, but to get a better look at what is considered one of the most critical indicators of a woman's taste and status, her sleeves. This might sound strange, but in Heian, Japan, the sleeves were the ultimate fashion statement. The artistry was in how these layers were combined. Each robe was a different color, and they were cut so that the edges of every single layer were visible at the neckline and, most spectacularly, at the cuffs of the wide sleeves. The combination of colors, the Kasani no Irome, was subject to incredibly strict rules and was meant to reflect the season, a specific plant, or even a poetic concept. A woman's choice of these color combinations was her public artistic thesis. So on the day of the festival, you are once again strategically positioned. This time you're not hiding behind a willow tree. You're a part of the crowd, affecting an air of detached amusement, as if you just happened upon this lively scene. You've brought a couple of attendants with you to blend in. The road is lined with ox-carts, all parked to allow their occupants to view the procession. This is the key. Noble ladies would watch from within their carriages, the bamboo blinds lowered. But to show off their elegance and to get a bit of air, they would often rest their arms on the carriage window, allowing their layered sleeves to drape tantalizingly over the edge. It was a deliberate, competitive display. The roadside became a gallery of sleeves. You scan the line of carriages, your eyes searching for one that matches the quiet elegance you remember. And then you see it. It's the same carriage, and draped from the window is not one, but two sets of sleeves. The lady and one of her chief attendants, no doubt. Your eyes fix on the more elaborate of the two. It's breathtaking. She has chosen a combination known as Matsugasani, or pine tree layers. It's a sophisticated winter theme, even though spring is advancing. It consists of layers of green, from deep moss to pale new-growth pine, topped with a layer of reddish-brown and a final layer of white silk, evoking a snow-dusted pine tree. It's a bold, slightly melancholic choice for this time of year, a nod to the passing of winter. It tells you she is not a slave to the most obvious seasonal trends. She is a connoisseur. She has a poetic soul. This brings us to a wonderfully nerdy niche detail of Heian life. There were actual guidebooks and catalogs for these color combinations. These weren't just made up on the spot. There were dozens, if not hundreds, of named combinations, like plum blossom of the 5th month, weeping cherry, or maple leaves underwater. A woman's skill lay in choosing the right combination for the right occasion, and in the quality of her dyes and silks. An off-the-rack combination was fine, but a truly fashionable woman might create a subtle variation on a classic theme, showing her own unique flair. Her pine tree layers in spring is exactly that kind of move, a subtle, intellectual fashion statement. As you stand there, absorbing the details, another man, clearly a nobleman from his attire, strolls past the carriage and slows his pace, his eyes also fixed on the display of sleeves. He lingers for a moment too long, his admiration a little too obvious. A pang of something sharp and unpleasant goes through you. A rival. Of course, a lady of such evident taste and refinement would not go unnoticed for long. The game just got more complicated. The historical controversy surrounding this sleeve viewing is similar to that of the kaimami. How much of this was for the woman's benefit, and how much was for the man's? While men were judging women on their sleeves, women and their attendants were, from behind their screens, just as keenly judging the men who passed by. They would note your posture, the color combinations of your own robes, the way you handled your fan, the quality of the attendance you kept. Was your admiration of hers leave discreet and tasteful, or was it a boorish stare? Did you look like a man of substance, or a foppish peacock? It was a two-minus-way street of intense, silent scrutiny. The idea that men held all the power of the gaze in Heian society is something many historians, particularly those focused on women's history, strongly dispute. The ladies were looking right back, and their judgment was swift and merciless. The procession begins to move. The carriage creaks forward, and the sleeve is withdrawn. The display is over, but you have what you came for. A new piece of her identity, a new line for your next poem. You now know she has a contrarian poetic streak. You also know you are not the only one who has noticed. The soft, perfumed air of romance is now tinged with the sharp scent of competition. You turn to your attendant. Your casual, detached air is gone. There's a new urgency in your voice. You need to get to your writing desk. Your next letter needs to be perfect. The rivalry has sharpened your senses. Your letters have become more frequent, the poetry more intense. You are building a connection, a fragile bridge of paper and ink, but you still feel a profound distance. You know her taste in colors, you know the rhythm of her prose, but you crave something more personal, more elemental. And in the world of the Heian court, one of the most personal signatures a person has is their scent. Every aristocrat, male or female, has a unique, personal blend of incense that they use to perfume their robes, their rooms, and even their letters. This isn't just a matter of dabbing on some perfume. It's a highly sophisticated art form known as takamona. You don't just burn a single type of wood. You create a complex recipe, a personal formula, by mixing finely ground ingredients like aloes wood, sandalwood, camphor, musk, and ambergris into a paste with honey or plum pulp. This mixture is then kneaded into small balls and aged, sometimes for years. The final product is then gently heated over a charcoal burner, often kept in a beautifully lacquered box, and the fragrant smoke is used to perfume clothing that has been draped over a bamboo rack. You've already had a hint of her scent from the letter she sent, that light, floral fragrance. But a letter only carries a ghost of the scent. To truly experience it, you need to be near something she has worn or used. This is where your intermediary, Coritator, becomes more than just a messenger. His role now evolves into that of an intelligence agent. His mission to get close enough to her world to bring back a more potent olfactory report. He succeeds in the most subtle way possible. During one of his deliveries, he engages in a bit of polite conversation with one of her junior ladies in waiting. On his previous visit, he had accidentally dropped a rather nice folding fan. The lady in waiting, charmed by his polite manners and perhaps by the fan, which he insisted she keep, is now more friendly. She mentions that her mistress had been practicing her calligraphy, and there were some discarded practice sheets. Coritator, with practiced humility, asks if he might have one, professing a humble desire to study a master's brushwork. The attendant, seeing no harm in it, gives him a sheet of paper that her mistress had handled only moments before. When Coritator returns, he presents the paper to you with a triumphant bow. It's a simple piece of practice paper, marked with a few elegant but incomplete characters. But as you bring it to your nose, you are hit with the full force of her scent. It's clean yet complex. The sandalwood base is clear, but there's a top note of something sweet and slightly spicy, perhaps cassia, and a hint of something cool and green, like pine needles. It is intoxicating. It's a scent that speaks of clarity, refinement, and a touch of mystery. It is as much a part of her as her handwriting. Inhaling it, you feel closer to her than ever before. You are, in a very real sense, breathing in her presence. This brings us to a wonderfully strange and specific aspect of Heian culture incense competitions, or taki minus monoi was e. These were popular gatherings where courtiers would bring their personal incense blends and compete to see whose was the most sublime. Guests would act as judges, sniffing the fragrant smoke and writing poems in praise of their favorites. A person's skill in creating incense was a direct reflection of their breeding and sensitivity. There were famous recipes, passed down through families for generations, guarded like state secrets. To identify a person's signature blend was a sign of a discerning nose and a sophisticated palate. It was the Heian equivalent of being a wine connoisseur. You now have a mission. Your next poem will not be about what you saw, but about what you smelled. It's a riskier move. It's more intimate, more suggestive. But if she understands the reference, it will show a level of connection far beyond the visual. The academic debate here centers on the chemistry and psychology of this practice. Was smelling someone really a way to judge their character? Modern science tells us that our sense of smell is deeply linked to memory and emotion, more so than any other sense. A particular scent can trigger a powerful emotional response. Heian courtiers may not have known the neuroscience, but they certainly understood the effect. Historians argue whether these signature scents were truly unique, or if they, like the sleeve colors, fell into recognizable categories. Some scholars believe that there were fashionable scents for each season, and that a connoisseur would be able to identify not just the individual ingredients, but also recognize the blend as, for example, a summer morning type or a winter evening type. The goal wasn't just to smell good, it was to smell correctly and interestingly. As you sit with this fragrant piece of paper, you realize the game has changed. Your rival, the man you saw at the festival, might be able to appreciate the color of her sleeves from a distance. But can he get close enough to know her scent? Can he distinguish the notes of cassia from the undertones of sandalwood? This is a new, more intimate battlefield. You have moved beyond the public displays of the carriage window and into the private, invisible world of personal aroma. You have discovered her secret signal, a broadcast that only the most dedicated and sensitive receiver can pick up. Now you must prove to her that you are listening. Your poetic reference to her personal incense was a resounding success. Her reply was even more subtle and witty than usual, a clear sign that you've broken through to a new level of intimacy. The rivalry, however, still gnaws at you. You know you need to solidify your position to move from being a mere correspondent to a recognized suitor. A correspondence is thrilling, but it is, by its nature, slow and indirect. You need a tool for more immediate, real-time communication, however limited. And for that, you turn to the most versatile accessory in the Heian court, the fan. The fan, or OGI, is ubiquitous. Everyone carries one. On a practical level, it provides a welcome breeze in the humid summers and serves as a handy note-pad for jotting down a particularly clever line of poetry. But its true function is social. It is a shield, a pointer, a signaling device, and an extension of the hand. In a world of rigid composure, the fan is one of the few acceptable outlets for gesture and expression. You know that there will be a series of religious lectures at the main hall of the palace, an event that many members of the court are expected to attend. It's a formal occasion, but it will bring you into the same large, cavernous room as her. You won't be able to speak. You will be seated in the men's section, she in the women's, separated by screens of state quichou, which are more opaque and formidable than the bamboo blinds of a carriage. But there will be moments, brief glimpses through gaps or around the edges of the screens, when you might be visible to each other. This is where the fan comes into play. You choose your fan for the day with the same care you would choose your robes. It's a high-OGI, a formal court fan made of thin blades of cypress wood, stitched together with silk thread. The outer blades are painted, not with a garish landscape, but with a simple, elegant motif, a few reeds bending in the wind, a theme you subtly referenced in a recent poem. When closed, it's a simple baton of polished wood. When opened, it's a canvas for your taste. The day of the lectures arrives. The hall is filled with the low murmur of courtiers and the rustle of silk. You take your seat, your posture a study in formal grace. Across the hall, behind the heavy silk screens, you can just barely make out the colorful edges of the ladies' robes. You can't see her, but you know she is there. You can feel her presence. The lecture begins, a droning chant by a high-ranking monk. The air is thick with the combined scents of 100 different personal incenses, a confusing fog of perfume. As the lecture wears on, you see a flicker of movement from the women's side. A fan, exquisitely painted with wisteria, appears for a moment in a gap between two screens. It snaps open, then slowly closes. It's her. It has to be. Your heart quickens. This is a signal. Now, it's your turn to reply. You slowly raise your own fan. You don't wave it around, that would be dreadfully vulgar. Instead, you perform a series of carefully controlled gestures. You might open it halfway and hold it in front of your face, angled slightly toward her screen, a gesture of polite acknowledgement. You might then tap it gently against the palm of your other hand, a subtle way of saying, "I am thinking of you." If you were feeling bold, you might raise it to your brow, as if shielding your eyes from a brilliant light, a highly poetic and complimentary gesture. Each movement is a word in a silent, graceful language. This brings us to a specific and fascinating piece of non-verbal communication from the era of flirting. This was a real and well-documented practice. There was a whole vocabulary of gestures. A closed fan pointed at someone could mean "I wish to speak with you." Dropping a fan could be an invitation for the person who picks it up to initiate a conversation or a correspondence. A fan held to the lips meant to be discreet. It was a way to have a private conversation in a very public room, a layer of communication happening right under the noses of the oblivious. Of course, your rival is here too. You see him, seated a few rows away. He has also noticed the wisteria fan. He raises his own fan, a much more brightly colored affair, and gives it a confident flick, a gesture that seems to say, "I see you, and I am impressed." It's a bit too forward, a bit too self-assured. You watch the wisteria fan. After his gesture, it disappears behind the screen and doesn't reappear. A small victory. Your subtlety has won the round. His brashness has been met with silence. The historical debate among scholars of material culture is how standardized this fan language really was. Was it a universally understood code, like semaphore, or was it more personal and intuitive, a set of gestures whose meaning was created and understood only by the two people involved? The consensus seems to lean toward the latter. While there were some commonly understood gestures, the real art lay in the nuance, the speed of the movement, the angle of the fan, the context of the situation. It was a fluid and creative form of expression, not a rigid sign language. It's possible that you and she are, in this moment, inventing your own private language of fans. The lecture concludes. As the courtiers begin to rise and file out, you see the wisteria fan appear one last time. It is half open and held downwards, a gesture of modesty and farewell. You respond by bringing your closed fan to your heart for a brief moment, before letting your hand drop to your side. The exchange is over. You've barely moved for 2 hours. You haven't spoken a word to her, but you've had a conversation. It was a conversation of painted wooden subtle gestures of timing and taste. You've outmaneuvered your rival and established a new, more immediate channel of communication. You are no longer just a name on a letter. You are a physical presence, a partner in a silent public dance. The fan conversation was a success, but it was also a stark reminder of your limitations. A gesture is fleeting, a glimpse between screens is unsatisfying. You need a way to transmit more of your personality, to broadcast your talents beyond the confines of a 31-syllable poem. In the Heian court, if you weren't a great poet, you had better be a great musician. Music was one of the few arts that could transcend physical barriers, its notes drifting through screens and across gardens, carrying emotion directly to a listener's ear. Your instrument of choice is the Etiquette, a transverse bamboo flute. Its clear, piercing tone is considered distinctly masculine and is a staple in Gaigaku, the courtly orchestral music. You are a reasonably accomplished player, having been tutored in it since you were a boy. It's one of the essential skills for a man of your class, alongside calligraphy and archery. Now, you decide to use this skill not for a formal concert, but for a far more personal performance. You know the general location of her family's quarters within the sprawling palace complex. One evening, when the moon is full and the air is still, you take your flute and walk not to your own veranda, but to a secluded corner of a nearby garden, one that you have calculated is within earshot of her residence. You are not concealed, but you are not conspicuous either. You are just a nobleman, seemingly moved by the beauty of the moon, who has decided to play his flute. It's a carefully staged piece of romantic theater. You don't play a loud, flashy piece. That would be vulgar. You choose a melody that is famous for its melancholy and beauty, a classic tune that every educated person would recognize. The first notes hang in the cool night air, clear and pure. You pour all the feeling you can trite in letters into your breath. You play with longing, with a touch of the mono, no aware sadness that is so prized. You are speaking to her, using a language older than words. As you play, you imagine the sound reaching her. Is she listening? Is she sitting by her window, behind her screen, pausing her conversation to try and identify the player? This is the core of music's power in your world. It's an acceptable way to be emotionally expressive in a society that values restraint above all else. You can't shout your love from the rooftops, but you can play a flute melody filled with such passionate sorrow that the entire court stops to listen and wonder who inspired it. This brings us to a fascinating and slightly quirky aspect of Heian musical culture, the impromptu jam session. It wasn't uncommon for music to be a form of social call minus and minus response. If a gentleman was playing his flute outside a lady's quarters, she might, if she was so inclined, respond by playing a few chords on her koto, the long 13 string zither. This would create a spontaneous duet, a conversation in music. The man would play a phrase, and the woman would answer, their instruments weaving together in the night air. It was considered an incredibly romantic and intimate exchange, a true meeting of artistic souls. You finish your melody and hold the last note, letting it fade into the chirping of the night crickets. You wait, your senses straining. You listen for the gentle pluck of a koto string, the sign that she has heard you and is replying. The silence stretches on. There is no answering music. For a moment your heart sinks. Was it too forward? Did she not hear? Or worse, did she hear and choose to ignore it? But then Koriteda, whom you had sent ahead to discreetly observe, returns from the shadows. He is smiling. He reports that while there was no answering music, he saw a light in her room flicker, and the silhouette of her ladies minus and minus waiting drew closer to the window facing the garden. They were listening. Her silence wasn't a rejection. It was a sign of respect. To immediately play in response might have seemed too eager. By remaining silent, she allowed your performance to stand on its own. A perfect, solitary jewel in the night. She is telling you that she was moved. The historical debate here concerns the skill level of these amateur courtier musicians. The tales and diaries are full of references to breathtaking musical performances that move listeners to tears. But was everyone truly a virtuoso? Probably not. Just like today, there would have been a wide range of talent. Some scholars suggest that being moved to tears was sometimes a conventional, polite response to a performance, regardless of its actual quality. It was the proper, sensitive thing to do. However, genuine musical talent was a huge social asset. A man like Minamoto no Yoshitsuan, the famous warrior, was also renowned for his skill on the flute. A woman's ability on the koto or biwa type of lute was a key part of her education and a measure of her refinement. Being unmisessical was a serious social handicap. As you walk back to your own quarters, the cool metal of the flute in your hand, you feel a sense of accomplishment. You have successfully sent another message, this time not on paper but on the air itself. You have demonstrated another facet of your cultivated personality. You have filled the night with your presence, your melancholy, your talent. You didn't get a reply in kind, but you received something just as valuable, the knowledge that you had an attentive and appreciative audience. The silent concert was over, but the melody, you hope, lingers in her mind. The seasons are turning. The vibrant greens of summer are beginning to soften into the muted tones of early autumn. Your correspondence with the lady has deepened, a steady stream of poetry and subtle gifts. The flute's serenade has been followed by more, each one a thread in the tapestry. You are weaving between your two worlds, but a new kind of intimacy is about to present itself, one born not of a clear, moonlit night, but of a dark and stormy one. A typhoon is sweeping through the capital. Not a destructive one, but a classic autumn storm that brings with it a relentless, drumming rain and howling winds. The world outside your chambers is a blur of gray sheets of water and thrashing bamboo. Travel is impossible. Court life grinds to a halt. Everyone is confined to their quarters. It is on nights like this, when the normal routines are suspended, that the strict boundaries of the court can sometimes become porous. You receive a message delivered by a rain-soaked Koriteda, who looks more like a drowned rat than a courtly messenger. It's not a letter but an oral invitation, passed from her chief lady minus and minus waiting to him. The message is discreet and coded. It says that the lady's father, a minor minister, has been unexpectedly called away to a consultation at the main palace, a brief lull in the storm allowing for the urgent trip. Her residence, the message implies, will be less guarded than usual. It's an invitation, a risky, thrilling, and terrifying invitation to visit her. You know what this means. It's not an invitation to sit and chat face to minus face. That is still unthinkable. You will be visiting her, but you will be visiting her screen. You will be allowed into the antechamber of her private rooms, and you will sit on one side of a Kicho, the portable screen of state, while she sits on the other. You will be in the same room, separated by only a few feet and a panel of thick, brocaded silk. You dress in your most subdued but elegant robes and make your way through the stormy night, your path lit by a single, swaying lantern. The rain plasters your hair to your forehead and soaks the hem of your trousers. When you arrive at her residence, you are quietly ushered in not through the main entrance but through a side door. The air inside is warm and filled with her signature scent, a stark contrast to the cold, wet chaos outside. You are led to her rooms and invited to sit on a cushion. In front of you is the screen. It is a beautiful object, its silk panels painted with a delicate landscape of autumn grasses. You can see the faint glow of her lamp through the fabric. And then, you hear it. A soft rustle of silk. She has taken her place on the other side. The silence is deafening, broken only by the drumming of the rain on the roof. Your heart is pounding so loudly you're sure she can hear it. This is the closest you have ever been to her. You can't see her. You can only sense her presence, a warmth, a faint perfume, a subtle energy on the other side of the silk. You clear your throat and speak her name, or rather the court title by which she is known. Your voice sounds strange and rough in the quiet room. From the other side, a voice replies. It's soft, higher minus pitched than you imagined, and impossibly elegant. She speaks a formal, polite greeting, and so begins your first conversation. You speak of the storm, of a famous poem about autumn rain, of the beauty of her screen. Your words are formal, stilted, but underneath them is a powerful current of unspoken emotion. This is where a truly unique, and perhaps to a modern mind, bizarre element of Heian romance comes into play: the eroticism of sound. In a culture of visual deprivation, the other senses become heightened. The sound of a woman's voice, the whisper of her silk robes as she moves, the gentle click of a fan being opened, these become incredibly intimate and evocative signals. The imagination is forced to do the work that the eyes cannot. The woman behind the screen becomes an idealized figure, her unseen face imagined to be as beautiful as her voice, her form as graceful as the sound of her movements. As you talk, you become acutely aware of every little sound she makes. You hear the soft clink of a hairpin as she adjusts it. You hear the whisper of her sleeve brushing against the floor. You hear her breath, a soft sigh after a particularly poignant line of poetry you quote. These sounds are your only clues to her physical reality. They are more intimate than any glimpse of a sleeve in a carriage. They are the sounds of her life, happening just inches away from you. The historical controversy here is simple: what was really going on behind that screen? The romantic literature, like the tale of Chang'an, is filled with scenes like this, which often lead to the hero pushing the screen aside or finding a way around it. But how common was that in reality? Social historians argue that for most people, the rules were iron minus clad. The screen was a real and respected barrier. A man who violated that space would not be seen as a romantic hero, but as a predator, bringing shame upon the lady and ruin to his own reputation. The tension, the romance, was supposed to exist with the barrier, not in spite of it. The idea that these screen minus side visits were just a prelude to a physical encounter is likely a literary trope, not a social norm. The true art was in creating intimacy across the divide. The storm begins to subside. The rain softens to a gentle patter. You know your time is up. It is considered deeply improper to overstay your welcome. You speak a few formal words of farewell. She replies in kind. You hear one last rustle of silk as she rises and retreats deeper into her rooms. You are then quietly escorted out. As you walk back under the clearing sky, the moon breaking through the clouds, you feel dazed. You still have not seen her face, but you have heard her voice. You have shared a space with her. You have listened to the small, secret sounds of her existence. It was a meeting of ghosts in the rainy night, a conversation with a beautiful voice on the other side of a wall. And it was, by the standards of your world, an act of profound intimacy. Your rainy night visit has changed everything. The relationship now feels tangible, grounded in the memory of her voice and her presence, just beyond the screen. As you move deeper into autumn, you realize that your courtship must now reflect the changing world around you. In Heian, Japan, being out of sync with the season is a cardinal sin of taste. Your entire romantic vocabulary, your poems, your gifts, the colors of your robes must be perfectly attuned to the poignant beauty of autumn. The world outside is a canvas of breathtaking decay. The maple leaves are turning brilliant shades of crimson and gold. The air is crisp, and the morning mists hang low over the gardens. The dominant emotion of the season is that same elegant melancholy, Mono no aware, but now it's not just a concept, it's a daily, visible reality. To be a successful suitor in autumn, you must become a connoisseur of sadness, an artist of the ephemeral. Your letters change. The passionate, forward-looking wisteria of early summer gives way to poems about the scattering of maple leaves, the plaintive cry of a deer searching for its mate in the hills, or the chill of the evening dew on a chrysanthemum. These are not just random pretty images, they are a shared cultural lexicon. When you write about the deer's cry, you are not just describing a sound. You are invoking a whole history of poems about loneliness and longing. She will understand the subtext immediately. You are the deer, and she is the mate you are calling for. Your choice of paper shifts to autumnal colors, deep oranges, saffronous, russet browns, and fading greens. The flowers you attach to your letters are no longer fresh blossoms, but perhaps a single perfect crimson maple leaf, or a sprig of pampas grass with its feathery plume. Each choice is a declaration that you are a man who feels the season in his very bones. One day you decide to send a gift, not just a letter, but a physical object. The gift must be thoughtful, beautiful, and, of course, seasonally appropriate. You don't send something expensive or ostentatious. That would be vulgar, a crude display of wealth. Instead, you orchestrate a perfect, fleeting moment of beauty. You have your servants go out to the countryside, to a specific hillside famous for its maples. Their task is not to bring back branches, but to collect the most perfect, unblemished crimson leaves that have just fallen. You then arrange these in a beautiful, shallow lacquer box. You don't just pile them in. You arrange them as if they had just been scattered by the wind. On top of the leaves, you place your poem written on a piece of rich, dark brown paper. The poem connects the beauty of the leaves to the beauty of her sleeves, which you still remember. The final touch? You have a single drop of dew placed on one of the leaves just before the box is closed. By the time it reaches her, the dew will have evaporated, leaving only a faint watermark. It's a gift that says, I wanted to capture this perfect autumn morning for you, in all its transient beauty. This brings us to a wonderfully specific and almost obsessive aspect of Heian culture, the seasonal calendar of aesthetic activities. Life was not just lived through the seasons, it was a performance of them. In spring, you went on excursions to view cherry blossoms. In summer, you had boating parties to enjoy the cool evening air. In autumn, it was all about leaf viewing, momiji-gari, and moon viewing. These weren't just casual strolls. They were serious aesthetic undertakings. You would dress in the appropriate colors, travel to a famous spot, and spend the day composing poetry about the scenery. To not participate, or to participate with a lack of genuine feeling, was to mark yourself as a clod. Your gift of leaves is a miniature, private version of one of these excursions. Of course, your rival is also participating in this seasonal performance. You hear through the court grapevine that he sent her a gift of rare chrysanthemums cultivated in his own garden. It's a strong move. Chrysanthemums are a major symbol of autumn in the imperial court itself. He is showing off his wealth, his skill in horticulture, and his sophisticated taste. The poetic war has now escalated to a gift-giving war. You sent a found object, a piece of natural, ephemeral beauty. He sent a cultivated object, a piece of refined, man-made beauty. The two gifts represent two different philosophies of taste. Her response will tell you which one she prefers. The historical debate here is about the sincerity of this seasonal sensitivity. Was everyone in the Heian court genuine moved to tears by the sight of a red leaf? Or was this an elaborate social ritual, a performance of sensitivity that was required to maintain one's status? The truth is likely somewhere in the middle. For some, like the famous poet Minus Monk's IGYO, the connection to nature was clearly profound and life minus altering. For others, it may have been more of a social obligation, like attending a certain number of charity galas today to keep up appearances. Many scholars argue that the performance itself was what mattered. Whether you truly felt the deep pathos of the falling leaves was less important than your ability to demonstrate that you did, through flawless poetry, perfect color coordination, and thoughtful, season-appropriate gifts. It was a culture that, in many ways, valued the expression of an emotion as much as the emotion itself. A few days later, a response arrives. It's a poem of thanks, but attached to it is not a flower, but a single dried oak leaf. It's a humble, sturdy leaf, not as flashy as a maple or a chrysanthemum. It's a symbol of endurance and strength. It's her way of saying she appreciated the natural, unpretentious quality of your gift over the cultivated display of your rival. You have won this round. You understood the soul of the season, not just its bright, showy surface. Your shared understanding of impermanence has deepened your bond. Your victory in the War of Autumn Gifts was sweet, but short-lived. Your rival is not one to be easily discouraged. He is a man of considerable influence and, as you are quickly learning, a talented poet in his own right. The private, 1-on-1 correspondence you so carefully cultivated is about to be forced into a very public and very competitive arena, a poetry competition, or UTA-A was E. These events were a cornerstone of Heian court life. They were formal gatherings where courtiers would be divided into two teams, the left and the right, and compete by composing poems on a set theme. A distinguished judge, usually a high-ranking and respected poet, would then critique each pair of poems and declare a winner for each round. It was part intellectual sport, part artistic showdown, and part brutal social bloodbath. A victory could elevate your status overnight. A clumsy poem or a public loss could make you a laughingstock for weeks. The theme for this particular competition, you learn with a jolt, is love concealed. It couldn't be more pointed. The entire court knows. In that unspoken way, the court knows everything about the budding romances of the season. This isn't just a poetry game, it's a public interrogation of your private feelings. And to make matters worse, you and your rival have been placed on opposing teams. He is on the left, which traditionally has a slight advantage, and you are on the right. The stage is set for a direct, albeit poetic, confrontation. The day of the competition arrives. The hall is pay. The air is thick with tension and incense. The judge, a venerable old minister known for his sharp tongue and impeccable taste, takes his seat. The lady you know is present, sitting with the other high-ranking women behind a screen of state. She will be a spectator to this duel fought over her. There is no greater pressure. The first few rounds involve other courtiers. Poems are read aloud, first from the left, then from the right. The judge offers his critiques, sometimes praising a clever turn of phrase, sometimes mercilessly dissecting a flawed metaphor. The room is silent except for the reader's voice and the judge's commentary. You can feel the collective anxiety of every poet waiting for their turn. Then it's time for your round. Your rival's poem is read first. It's a powerful, passionate verse. He compares his concealed love to a smoldering volcano, its quiet exterior hiding a molten core threatening to erupt. It's a bold, dramatic image, full of masculine energy. The room murmurs in appreciation. It's a strong poem. You feel a knot tighten in your stomach. Now your poem is read. You have taken a different approach. Instead of a grand, violent metaphor, you chose something small, quiet, and intensely personal. Your poem compares your concealed love to the scent of a plum blossom on a dark night, invisible, impossible to locate, yet undeniably present, filling the darkness with its fragrance. It's a direct callback to one of the first poems you ever sent her, a secret message embedded in a public performance. Yami no yomi in the dark of night. So Dini Farak, are you brushing against my sleeve? Yum no ko, Oh, the center of the plan. Shirub Nizi, oh Yakyu is the only guide I have. Kokoro Nawarika to find where my heart is. A different kind of murmur ripples through the room. They appreciate the craft, the subtlety. But which is better, the volcano or the fragrance? This brings us to a specific and fascinating detail about these competitions, the judgment process itself. The judge wouldn't just say the left wins. He would provide a detailed, often lengthy, and sometimes brutally honest critique. This judgment, or HNG, was a performance in itself. The judge might praise the heart kokoro of one poem but critique its form kotoba, or vice versa. He would deconstruct the allusions, analyze the flow of the syllables, and compare it to classic poems of the past. It was a live streamed literary criticism session. The judge clears his throat. He addresses the poem from the left first. A fine image, he says, his voice dry as dust. The volcano. Powerful, but perhaps a bit much. It lacks subtlety. It shouts where it should whisper. It is a feeling for a boy, not a man. A quiet goes through the crowd. Your rival, you see out of the corner of your eye, has gone rigid. The judge then turns to your poem. He is silent for a long moment, rereading it. The poem from the right he begins is a quieter thing, but it has truth in it. The image of the scent as a guide in the darkness. This shows an understanding of the nature of longing. It is not a volcano. It is a ghost. And in matters of the heart, are we not all haunted? He pauses again. The left is power, but the right is depth. The wing goes to the right. A wave of relief so intense it almost makes you dizzy washes over you. You have won. You have defeated your rival in a public forum, using a secret language that only you and she fully understand. You risk a glance towards the women's screen. You see nothing, but you can imagine the small, satisfied smile on her face. The academic debate here is whether these competitions were truly objective artistic contests, or if they were influenced by politics and social status. The answer is almost certainly both. While the poetic merits were genuinely debated, the judge's decision could be swayed by the political standing of the poet's family, his own personal alliances, or the subtle currents of court favor. A brilliant poem from a low-ranking courtier might lose to a mediocre one from the son of a powerful minister. Historians argue that these UTA-A were as much about reinforcing the social hierarchy as they were about celebrating poetry. Your win is not just a poetic victory, it's a social and political one as well. You have proven yourself to be on the winning side, a man of taste and influence. The rest of the competition passes in a blur. You have done what you needed to do. You have met your rival on the field of battle and emerged victorious. The volcano has been smothered by a quiet fragrance. Your concealed love is now, ironically, one of the most celebrated secrets in the entire court. Your victory at the poetry competition has elevated your status considerably. You are no longer just another suitor, you are the suitor, the man who bested his rival with a subtle verse. But this public success creates a private problem. The more attention you get, the more carefully you must tread. You need better information. You need an inside source. It's time to move beyond your own messenger, Coritata, and focus on the most important, often overlooked figures in a noble woman's life, her ladies in waiting, or NYOBO. These women were far more than servants. They were ladies' companions, secretaries, stylists, chaperones, and, most importantly, her gatekeepers. They were typically daughters of provincial officials or lesser aristocratic families, well educated and chosen for their intelligence, artistic skills, and loyalty. They controlled all access to their mistress. They read her letters with her, helped her compose replies, and offered their opinions on every suitor. Winning over the mistress meant first winning over her entourage. Your target is her chief lady waiting, a woman named Chuzhou. You know her name because it was she who relayed the invitation for your rainy night visit. She is the field marshal of this campaign, and you need to make her an ally. But how? A direct bribe would be an insult to a woman of her standing. You must use the same tools of indirect, aesthetic persuasion that you've been using all along. Your strategy is to fold. First, you begin to subtly acknowledge her in your correspondence. When you send a gift of rare, scented paper to her mistress, You include a few extra sheets of a slightly different but equally beautiful color with a short, formal note saying it is for her attendant's use. When you send a box of sweets, you make sure it is large enough for everyone to share. These are not gifts for Chuzhou herself, but they are a clear signal that you see and respect the household as a whole. You are not just courting a single person, you are courting a team. The second part of your strategy involves Kurotada. His role now shifts from messenger to diplomat. During his visits, he is instructed to engage Chuzhou's own attendants in polite conversation. He brings small, tasteful gifts, say popular storybook, a pouch of game pieces for the junior staff. He is building goodwill from the ground up. His ultimate goal is to establish a rapport with Chuzhou herself. The breakthrough comes during another delivery. Kurotada arrives to find Chuzhou overseeing the arrangement of autumn flowers in the main reception room. He presents your letter for her mistress, and then, as instructed, he compliments the flower arrangement. But he doesn't just say that's pretty. He says, "The way you have combined the wild chrysanthemums with the fading pampas grass reminds me of a poem by Norihira. My master has always said that true beauty lies in such contrasts. This is a brilliant move. He has shown that he, and by extension you, is educated. He has complimented her specific artistic choice. And he has named mine dropped a famous, dashing poet of the past, creating a sophisticated, flirtatious mood. But she is perhaps a little charmed." She engages Kurotada in a short conversation about poetry. At the end of it, as she takes the letter, she remarks, "Your master has good taste in poems and in messengers." It's a small comment, but it's a massive victory. The gate is beginning to open. This brings us to a fascinating and niche aspect of court life, the power and influence of these ladies minus and minus waiting. Many of the most important works of Heian literature, the diaries and stories that give us our deepest insight into the era, were written by these women. S.E. Ishona Gon, author of the Pillow Book, was a lady minus and minus waiting to Empress Dai. Murasaki Shikibu, author of the Tale of Genji, was a lady minus and minus waiting to Empress Shoshi. These were not passive observers, they were brilliant, witty, and often ruthless commentators on the world around them. They were the gossip columnists, the literary critics, and the political analysts of their day. To be on their bad side was social suicide. A few days later, the proof of your success arrives. Her mistress's reply to you is, as always, elegant, but tucked into the fold is a second, much smaller piece of paper. It's a note from Chuzhou. It is written in a crisp, business-like hand. It reads simply, "The Minister of War's son has sent another gift. Red maples this time. An uninspired choice. It's a bombshell. You have an informant. You have a spy in the enemy camp. Chuzhou has chosen a side. She has decided that you are the better candidate for her mistress, and she is now actively working to help you. She is feeding you intelligence about your rival's moves." The historical debate here concerns the motivations of these NYOBO. Were they acting purely out of loyalty to their mistress, helping her secure the best possible match? Or did they have their own agendas? Some historians argue that these women were playing their own complex social and political games. By aligning with a promising suitor, a lady minus and minus waiting could improve her own standing and perhaps secure a favorable position for herself or her family if the match was successful. Her loyalty to her mistress was intertwined with her own personal ambition. Chuzhou's note is not just an act of kindness, it's a strategic investment in your future, and by extension her own. You now have a powerful advantage. The courtship is no longer a blind game of chess. You have someone on the inside whispering the opponent's strategy to you before he even makes a move. You know to avoid red maples. You know his gifts are becoming predictable. You can now tailor your own efforts to be more surprising, more creative, more perfectly attuned to the lady's desires because you have a guide. The gatekeeper has become your ally. With Chuzhou as your secret ally, your confidence soars. You have an edge over your rival, and your correspondence with the lady has reached a new level of emotional depth. You feel bold, ready to push the boundaries of poetic expression. But as you sit down to compose your next masterpiece, a subtle warning from Chuzhou, delivered orally via Kurotada, gives you pause. The warning is simple: be mindful of the dew on the lotus leaf. It sounds like a line from a poem, but you understand its meaning instantly. It's a caution against being too direct, too passionate, too physical in your language. This introduces you to one of the most important unwritten rules of Heian courtship, the minefield of forbidden topics. Your love poems must exist in a state of perpetual, elegant suggestion. There are certain words, images, and ideas that are strictly taboo. To cross that line is to commit a fatal error in taste, revealing yourself not as a sensitive soul, but as a crude and impatient lout. The first and most obvious taboo is any direct mention of the body. You can write about sleeves, fans, and the scent of a robe, but you cannot write about lips, skin, or hair in a sensual way. These are considered far too intimate to raw. Your love must be for her soul, her taste, her poetic sensibility, not her physical form, which you technically haven't even seen. A poem that says "I long to touch your hand" would be the Heian equivalent of sending an unsolicited, vulgar picture. Instead, you must use metaphors. This is where the image of the dew on a lotus leaf comes in. In Buddhist symbolism, the lotus is a pure flower that rises unstained from the muddy water. Dew on its leaf is a symbol of purity, but also of impermanence and, crucially, non-minus attachment. The water sits on the leaf but never truly wets it. Chuzhou's warning is telling you that your passion must be like that dew, present, beautiful, but not clinging or possessive. You can allude to longing, but not to conquest. Another major taboo is jealousy. While you may feel it gnawing at you, to express it in a poem is a sign of weakness and insecurity. You cannot write a poem saying, "I hate that other guy who sends you chrysanthemums." It's unseemly. Instead, you must channel that competitive energy into creating a superior poem on a neutral topic. Your victory at the UTA-A was the perfect example of this. You didn't attack your rival, you simply outshone him, proving your worth through artistry, not aggression. To complain about a rival is to admit he is a threat. A truly confident man in the eyes of the court would never do that. This brings us to a wonderfully weird and specific little corner of Heian poetic etiquette: the avoidance of unpoetic words. The vocabulary of the waka was highly curated. Certain words, especially those of Chinese origin Congo, were considered too harsh, too academic, or too technical for the delicate, emotional world of the love poem. For example, you wouldn't use a word like logic or strategy. Even some everyday Japanese words were considered too mundane. You wouldn't write about mending a fence or cooking rice. The world of the poem was an idealized, elevated reality, and your language had to stay within its perfumed, silk-lined walls. As you sit at your desk, you begin to see the challenge in a new light. It's not about what you can say, but about what you can accomplish within the incredibly tight constraints of what you are allowed to say. It's like trying to paint a masterpiece using only 3 colors. The genius is in the artistry, not the raw emotion. You look at the poem you were about to write. It was a passionate verse, comparing your desire to a river flooding its banks. It felt powerful and honest to you a moment ago. Now, you see it for what it is: clumsy, aggressive, and full of dew. You crumple the expensive paper. You must start again. Your new poem takes a different tack. You write about Mandarin ducks, a classic symbol of marital fidelity and companionship, swimming on a cold lake. They are together, yet separate, their bond expressed not in touching, but in the way they move in perfect synchrony. Misanoo emoni on the water surface. Narabai to Wyogu swimming side minus by minus side. O is high. Dorino the Mandarin ducks. Gage koso. Tagei though their shadows may differ. Kokoro wa hirotsu, their hearts are as one. It's a poem about unity and shared feeling, not about physical desire. It expresses a deep and abiding connection without once mentioning a forbidden topic. It respects the boundary of the screen. It is a safe, and therefore brilliant, move. The historical debate here touches upon the psychology of censorship and creativity. Did these strict taboos stifle genuine feeling? Or did they, paradoxically, foster a more profound and subtle form of creativity? Many literary scholars argue for the latter. They contend that by forcing poets to work with a limited tools, the culture encouraged an incredible level of nuance and metaphorical sophistication. The need to talk around a subject led to the development of a rich symbolic language that was far more evocative than a direct statement could ever be. The taboos weren't just a list of don'ts, they were the very framework that gave Heian poetry its unique and enduring power. You send your poem of the Mandarin ducks. The reply, when it comes, is warm and appreciative. Chuzhou includes another small note, a wise choice. The river remains within its banks. You have successfully navigated the minefield. You have learned that in the delicate ecosystem of the Heian heart, the most powerful statements are often the quietest ones. The poem of the Mandarin ducks was the final key. It proved you understood not just the rules of poetry, but the deeper rules of discretion and respect. A few days later, the invitation you've been dreaming of finally arrives. It is another oral message, delivered by a solemn orator who seems to grasp the immense significance of the moment. You are invited for a night visit. Not a stormy, impromptu meeting like before, but a formal, arranged rendezvous. This is the moment when a suitor transitions from a correspondent to a recognized intimate. This is the night you will share a room. The anticipation is almost unbearable. You spend the entire day in a state of nervous preparation. You bathe in water scented with irises. You put on your finest robes, not the most colorful but the most elegant, a subtle layering of dark, nocturnal shades. And you perfume them with your absolute best incense blend, the one you've been aging for years, reserved for only the most important occasions. Every detail must be perfect. As night falls, you make your way to her residence. The moon is a thin silver crescent, offering little light. This time, you are escorted through the main entrance. The household is quiet, but you know that behind every screen and down every corridor, people are aware of your presence. You are being observed, even when you see no one. You are led to the same suite of rooms as before, but this time the atmosphere is different. It's not a hurried refuge from a storm, it's a carefully set stage. The room is immaculate. A single beautiful hanging scroll of a moonlit landscape adorns the wall. A koto rests in the corner, its silk strings gleaming, and in the center of the room stands the kicho, the screen of state, your silent chaperone for the evening. You take your seat on the guest's cushion. You hear the rustle of silk, and you know she is now on the other side. The air is electric with unspoken words. This is the culmination of months of effort, of peeking through fences, of agonizing over paper colors, of dueling with poems. It has all led to this sitting in the dark, separated by a piece of embroidered silk. The conversation begins, your voice and hers weaving together in the quiet room. You speak more freely now. You talk of the poetry competition, and she offers a soft, musical laugh when you describe the judge's harsh words for your rival. You compliment the scroll on the wall, and she tells you the story of the artist who painted it. The conversation is no longer just a series of formal exchanges, it's a genuine sharing of thoughts and experiences. You are building a real connection, a meeting of minds. This brings us to a specific, crucial element of the night visit, the test of conversation. A man was expected to be a brilliant conversationalist, able to discourse wittily on art, music, literature, and the subtle politics of the court. He had to be charming, intelligent, and entertaining for hours on end. This was the main event of the evening. A man who was handsome but dull, or a great poet who was a bore in person, would not be invited back. This was your final, most important audition. As the hours pass, you feel the formality between you begin to melt away. Her voice becomes less guarded, more playful. You even engage in a bit of spontaneous poetry, composing a linked verse ringa together, one of you creating the first 3 lines of a poem and the other completing the final 2. Your minds are in sync, finishing each other's poetic sentences. It is a profoundly intimate act of co-minus creation. Here we must address a somewhat sensitive and debated historical point, the physical reality of the screen. In the romantic imagination, and in tales like Genji, the hero often finds a way past this barrier. He might accidentally knock it over, or the lady might faint from the sheer emotion of it all, requiring him to come to her aid. Historians are deeply skeptical of these literary tropes. In reality, the screen was a powerful social and physical symbol. On a first formal visit like this, it was almost certainly inviolable. The test was not whether you could get past it, but whether you could create a bond so strong that it rendered the screen irrelevant. The eroticism was in the tension, in the near-perfect intimacy thwarted by a single, beautiful object. To breach that barrier would be to break the spell, to shatter the delicate, high-stakes game you were both so skillfully playing. The night wears on. The lamp on her side of the screen casts her silhouette against the silky, vague, shadowy outline of her head and shoulders. It's the most you have ever seen of her, and it is tantalizingly abstract. You can see the graceful curve of her neck as she tilts her head, the shape of her elaborate hairstyle. You trace the outline with your eyes, your imagination filling in the details. This shadow, this ghost of a person, is the focus of all your longing. You know the night must end soon. The first hint of gray is beginning to touch the eastern sky. Protocol dictates that you must be gone before dawn, but for these few, precious hours, you have shared a world. You have built a palace of words in the darkness, a space where your two minds could meet, even if your bodies could not. The screen between you is not a wall. It is the very thing that gives the encounter its meaning, its beauty, and its unbearable, exquisite tension. The first faint chirping of a morning bird cuts through the air. It's a gentle sound, but it serves as an alarm clock for the Heian courtier. The night is over. The magical liminal space you and she created in the darkness must now dissolve with the coming of the light. The rule is absolute and non-negotiable. You must leave before dawn. This is not just a matter of etiquette. It is a crucial part of the romantic narrative itself. This practice of the pre-dawn departure is one of the most poignant and recurring themes in Heian literature. The image of the lover leaving in the cold, misty morning, his heart full of the memory of the night and the sorrow of parting, is a cornerstone of the era's romantic ideal. To linger too long to be seen leaving in the full light of day would be a disaster. It would strip the encounter of its poetry and mystery, reducing it to a clumsy, public fact. It would be embarrassing for you and, more importantly, deeply compromising for her. Your departure must be as graceful and discreet as your arrival. You fall silent, and from the other side of the screen, she does too. The unspoken understanding hangs in the air between you. It's time. You rise from your cushion, the movement feeling heavy and reluctant. You speak a final, soft farewell. You don't say goodbye. You might quote a line of poetry about the morning mist or the fleeting nature of dreams. Akatsuki know the moment of dawn. Wakao Shiki makes parting sorrowful. Yamen Arabe if this were a dream. Say Nakaramashi I would wish not to wake. Kimi ne wanto just to see you again. Her reply is a barely audible whisper of assent. You hear one last, soft rustle of silk. It is the sound of finality. You turn and are escorted out by a silent attendant leaving the warm, scented room for the cool, damp air of the pre-dawn garden. The world is washed in shades of gray and pale indigo. Mist clings to the ground, muffling sound and blurring the edges of the trees. The path is slick with dew. This walk home is a solitary, reflective journey. Your mind is a whirlwind of sensations from the night, the sound of her laugh, the shadow of her form on the screen, the way your minds met in the creation of a linked verse. The physical world around you seems to reinforce your emotional state. It's beautiful, melancholic, and deeply atmospheric. This is the feeling that poets have been trying to capture for centuries, the kin UG and you know WAKR, the morning of departure. This brings us to a specific and charmingly practical detail of this ritual. How did a gentleman navigate his way home in the dark? Heian Minuscule was not a city with streetlighted. Once you left the flickering lanterns of the lady's residence, you were plunged into near-total darkness. A high-ranking nobleman would, of course, have one or two attendants with him carrying lanterns. But these lanterns were not floodlights. They cast a small, shaky pool of light. Getting lost was a real possibility. Furthermore, there was the ever-present danger of running into the city watch, or worse, the entourage of another nobleman returning from a similar nocturnal visit. An awkward encounter in a misty alleyway was something everyone wished to avoid. The journey home was a small adventure in itself. As you walk, your feelings are a complex mix of triumph and sorrow. The triumph is obvious. The visit was a success. You were charming, you were witty. You built a powerful connection. The sorrow is equally potent. The beautiful intimacy of the night is over. and you are once again alone. This bittersweet feeling, this mono-no-aware, is not a negative thing. In the aesthetic of your culture, it is the most desirable emotional state. A love affair that is purely happy is seen as shallow. An affair tinged with the sadness of parting with the knowledge of its own fragility is considered deep and meaningful. Your sorrow is a testament to the beauty of what you just experienced. The historical debate here centers on the performative aspect of this mourning minus after sadness. Were lovers genuinely heartbroken each time they parted? Or was this melancholy a socially expected performance? The diaries of the era are filled with poems written about the sorrow of dawn. It was the correct emotion to feel and, more importantly, to express. Some scholars argue that it was a highly ritualized display. A man was expected to look forlorn and distracted the day after a visit. It was proof that he was a man of deep feeling and that the lady he visited was worthy of such powerful emotions. His public display of lovesickness was a compliment to her. It was a way of saying, my night with this woman was so profound that it has completely undone me. You finally reach your own quarters as the sky begins to lighten in the east. The world is slowly waking up. You are exhausted, but your mind is racing. The encounter is over, but the ritual is not. The most important part is yet to come. You cannot simply go to sleep. You must immediately sit down at your writing desk, while the memory is fresh and the emotions are raw, and compose the single most important letter of your entire courtship. The game isn't over, it's just entered its most critical phase. You are back in your own chambers, but the night is not over. The lingering scent of her perfume seems to cling to your robes, a ghostly reminder of her presence. Though your body aches for sleep, you know that this is the most crucial moment of all. You cannot rest. You must immediately compose the mourning minus after letter, the Kinyuji and you no Fumi. This letter is not just a polite thank minus you note. It is a mandatory and time minus sensitive piece of the romantic ritual, and its importance arguably outweighs the visit itself. To fail to send a letter, or to send a clumsy or delayed one, would be a catastrophic insult. It would imply that the night was forgettable, that you were not moved, that she was not worthy of immediate poetic reflection. It would erase all the goodwill you so carefully built. Your rival, you can be sure, would be overjoyed at such a blunder. The pressure is immense. Your mind is foggy with lack of sleep, but your poem must be a diamond of clarity and emotion. You sit at your writing desk. The first rays of sun are just beginning to filter through the paper screens, but you light a candle anyway, creating a small, intimate space for your work. You select your materials with extra care. The paper must be of the highest quality, perhaps a thick Michinoku paper known for its richness. The color should be subdued and thoughtful, a deep blue to evoke the fading night, or a pale gray to mirror the dawn mist. Then, the poem. It must encapsulate the feeling of the night and the sorrow of your departure. It should not be a literal report of your conversation, but an emotional snapshot. You must allude to a specific detail of the encounter, proving that you are attentive and that the memory is vivid. You recall the shadow of her from on the screen. That is your anchor. After several discarded drafts, you brush the final characters onto the paper. The calligraphy must be expressive, perhaps showing a hint of emotional turmoil, a slight lack of control that speaks to your sleepless, love-struck state. Honobono to faintly in the dawn. Akashi no Sorino across the morning sky. Keijen Oyo, is that but a shadow? Wagamini Sodi that follows by my side. Tinu Omokage your face which will not fade. You've done it. You've linked the faint light of Dawn Akashi to the memory of her face Omokage, which you've only seen as a shadow. You've told her that her image has followed you home and refuses to fade, a ghost that haunts you in the new day. It's passionate, it's melancholic, and it's deeply personal, but the letter is not complete. As always, you must attach a flower. On this occasion, the choice is laden with meaning. You cannot send a fresh, vibrant blossom. That would be completely out of tune with the mood. Instead, you go out into your dew-soaked garden and find a flower that is slightly wilted, perhaps an autumn chrysanthemum with a few drooping petals. This is not a sign of neglect. It is a powerful symbol of your own emotional state, beautiful, but overwhelmed and exhausted by love. The wilted flower is a mirror of your own heart. This practice brings us to a wonderfully specific and almost theatrical aspect of the morning minus after ritual. The messenger who delivered this letter was also part of the performance. Korateda cannot look cheerful and well minus rested. He must appear harried and exhausted, as if he'd been up all night attending to his lovesick master. His robes might be slightly disheveled. His speech should be brief and subdued. He is a walking testament to the profound effect the night had on you. The entire household would see him arrive and think, the lady's visitor had a very emotional night. He is clearly a man of deep feeling. You hand the letter, tied to its sad, beautiful flower, to a properly coached Korateda and send him on his way. Only now can you allow yourself to rest. But you don't sleep soundly. You are now on the other side of the agonizing weight, wondering how your letter will be received. The historical debate here revolves around the sincerity versus the performative nature of this entire ritual. Was the morning minus after letter a genuine, spontaneous outpouring of feeling, or a carefully calculated, almost mandatory performance? The answer, as is often the case with Heian culture, is yes. It was both. No doubt many lovers were genuinely moved and felt compelled to write, but the act was so heavily codified and so socially critical that it also became a performance. Scholars point to the fact that there were essentially templates for these poems. Certain images, the crow of the rooster, the cold morning dew, tears on a sleeve, were used so often they became cliches. The skill was not in inventing a new feeling, but in giving a fresh, personal twist to an established convention. The wilted flower, the exhausted messenger, these were all part of a well-understood script. You were playing a role, but you were also expected to inhabit that role with genuine emotional commitment. Later that day, her reply arrives. It is swift, a sign of her own attentiveness. Her poem is written on a piece of paper the color of the dawn sky. It speaks of the lingering scent of your incense on her robes and how the sound of the morning bells seemed to mock her loneliness. Attached is not a flower, but a single crimson maple leaf, glistening as if with a tear. She has perfectly mirrored your sentiments. She has validated your performance and offered her own in return. The ritual is complete. The night visit, sealed and perfected by the exchange of these letters, has been a triumphant success. It is no longer just a memory, it has been transformed into a shared work of art. The exchange of morning minus after letters solidifies your bond. The path ahead seems clear, but the world of the Heian court is notoriously fickle. A political alliance can shift, a rumor can poison a reputation, or sometimes a heart can simply change its mind. One day you send a letter, a beautiful verse on paper the color of a winter sky, and the silence that follows is different. It's not the tense, anticipatory silence of before. This is a cold, empty silence. Days pass, and there is no reply. You send another letter, this one more questioning, attached to a sprig of a hardy evergreen, a symbol of your constancy. It is not returned, but the silence continues. Korateda reports that when he delivered it, the atmosphere at her residence was polite but chilly. The usual friendly chatter from the attendants was absent. Chujo was nowhere to be seen. You are being ghosted, Heian style. This is how a relationship ends in your world. There is no dramatic breakup conversation, no tearful confrontation. That would be a breach of decorum for everyone involved. Instead, there is the slow, agonizing fade to black. The rejection is communicated through non-minus action. The unanswered letter is a clear, if gentle, no. You are faced with a choice. You could persist, sending more letters, becoming a nuisance and a subject of pity and ridicule. Or you can accept the silent message and retreat with your dignity intact. The art of courtship also requires knowing the art of being gracefully rejected. There were several ways for a lady to signal her disinterest. The most gentle was simply to stop replying. A slightly more direct method was for her attendants to inform the messenger that she was unwell or indisposed, often for a suspiciously long period. The most definitive and most brutal form of rejection was to return a suitor's letter unopened. This was a clear and final severing of ties, a social slap in the face from which a man's reputation might not easily recover. Thankfully, you have not suffered that final indignity, but the message is clear. Something has changed. Through your own network of informants, you hear whispers. A new political appointment has been made. A rival clan to yours has gained influence with the emperor. And her father, a cautious man, sees a better strategical alliance elsewhere. The son of a newly powerful minister has entered the scene. Your beautiful, poetic courtship has been sidelined by the cold, hard reality of family politics. It's a bitter pill to swallow. This brings us to a somewhat sad niche aspect of Heian romance, the gift return. If a relationship ended after gifts had been exchanged, it was considered proper for the lady to return them. This wasn't done out of spite. It was a formal act of closure, a way of wiping the slate clean. If that lacquered box of autumn leaves you sent were to arrive back at your door, it would be a definitive sign that all is lost. It was the Heian equivalent of being asked for your keypad. You must now perform the final act of this failed romance acceptance. You cease sending letters. You must appear in public as if nothing is wrong, your expression one of serene, melancholy detachment. To show anger or heartbreak would be a sign of poor breeding. You must absorb the loss quietly, internally. Your sadness can be channeled into your art, a particularly sorrowful flute melody, a poem about the coldness of the winter moon, but it cannot be displayed as a personal grievance. The historical debate here centers on the emotional toll this system of silent rejection took on individuals. The literature is full of characters pining away for lost loves, but was this romanticized grief, or a reflection of real psychological distress? Scholars who study the personal diaries of the period argue that the pain was very real. Izumi Shikibu's diary, for example, is a raw and honest portrayal of a woman navigating complex, often painful love affairs. While the outward expression of emotion was highly controlled, the internal turmoil was intense. The demand for constant composure in the face of rejection likely created a great deal of stress and anxiety. The ideal was to be as serene as a Buddha, but the reality was often a heart in turmoil. One evening you see her carriage pass by. You are standing in the same spot where you first saw her leave, so many months ago. The blinds are down. You see nothing. You don't know if she even registered your presence. There is no exchange of glances, no secret signal. There is only the creak of the wheels and the lingering scent of a perfume you no longer recognize as hers. It has been changed. A new signature for a new suitor. You turn away, a profound sense of monotony washing over you. The affair, like the cherry blossoms of spring, was beautiful and transient. It has ended. You have lost the girl, but you have, if you handled it correctly, kept your dignity. You have played the game and lost, but you have played by the rules. In the world of the Heian court, that is a small victory in itself. You have learned how to love behind a screen. And now, you have learned how to lose in silence. You've weathered the silent rejection with as much grace as you could muster, channeling your melancholy into your flute and composing poems about the loneliness of wild geese against a winter sky. The world of courtship, you assume, is a man's game of advance and a woman's game of response. But the Heian court, for all its rigid patriarchy, was a place of surprising nuance. One day, as you are listlessly practicing your calligraphy, a letter arrives for you. This in itself is not unusual, but the messenger is not one you recognize, and the letter is from a woman you have never, to your knowledge, corresponded with. The letter is a masterclass in subtlety. It is written on a pale green paper, the color of new willow shoots, even though it is the dead of winter, a bold statement of hope and a look forward to spring. It is attached not to a flower but to a fossilized leaf, an object of strange and ancient beauty. The handwriting is confident and strikingly intelligent. The poem inside does not praise your looks or your status. Instead, it references your performance at the poetry competition months ago. Few you know Aikni on the winter pond. Hibiku if you inone the flute's note sekal. And oha yuri since that day. Kokoro no kuri the ice in my heart. Han okay? Benitoku you has faintly begun to melt. It's a daring, almost shockingly forward poem. She is saying that your art, your flute playing, which she has apparently overheard, and by extension your poetry has had an effect on her. She is not waiting to be pursued. She is, in her own elegant and indirect way, making the first move. This turns the entire courtship script on its head. While the dominant narrative involves an active man and a receptive woman, history and literature are full of examples of clever and assertive Heian women taking the initiative. This was a high minus risk, high minus reward strategy. A woman who was too aggressive could damage her reputation and be seen as improper. But a woman who could signal her interest with enough artistry and subtlety could attract the attention of a desirable man who might have otherwise overlooked her. How could a woman do this? She had a range of tools at her disposal. She might accidentally drop her fan in a corridor where a man she admired was walking. She could ensure her carriage was coincidentally parked next to his at a public festival, allowing her most beautiful sleeves to be displayed to their best advantage. Or, in the boldest move of all, she could do what this mysterious new correspondent has done: send an unsolicited poem. This brings us to a wonderfully specific detail about female-initiated correspondence. It often focused on the man's artistic or intellectual talents rather than his romantic potential. It was a safer opening. To say, "I think you are handsome," was too forward. But to say, "Your poem about the volcano at the competition," while perhaps a bit obvious, showed a passionate spirit that I found intriguing, was a perfectly acceptable literary critique that also happened to be a brilliant opening line. It established the woman as a peer, an intellectual equal, before any hint of romance entered the picture. This woman's poem to you is exactly that. It's a fan letter, a piece of music criticism, and a first date invitation all rolled into one. You are, of course, intrigued and flattered. After the sting of your recent rejection, this unsolicited admiration is a balm to your ego. But you must proceed with caution. Who is she? What is her family standing? Zhuzhou is no longer your source, so you must rely on your own wits and on Cortada's discreet inquiries. The historical debate here is quite lively. How much agency did Heian women truly have in choosing their partners? The official system was one of arranged marriages, where fathers and brothers made decisions based on political and economic advantage. However, the diaries and tales of the period suggest a more complex reality. While a woman might not have had the final say in her marriage, she often had considerable influence. A woman could use the tools of non-verbal and poetic communication to encourage desirable suitors and, just as importantly, to drive away undesirable ones. A man who received no poetic replies and whose messenger was consistently met with a chilly reception would eventually get the hint. A woman's soft power, her taste, her wit, her network of attendants was a formidable force. She couldn't propose marriage, but she could certainly steer the ship. Cortada returns with information. The lady is from a respectable family, though not one of the top Dynasty clans. Her father is a scholar of some renown, known more for his library than his political ambition. She is said to be unusually intelligent and a gifted poet, perhaps even more so than her previous, politically minded rival for your affections. And most intriguingly, no other major suitors are currently on the scene. You look again at her letter, at the bold choice of a fossilized leaf. It's a quirky, intellectual, and confident symbol. It's not the conventional beauty of a flower, but something more lasting, more mysterious. It's a puzzle. This is not the same game you played before. That was a courtship based on shared aesthetics and political maneuvering. This one, it seems, might be a true meeting of minds. You decide to reply. You choose a paper of a matching pale green and compose a poem that responds to her metaphor of the melting ice. You are not committing to anything. You are simply acknowledging her move and returning the serve. A new game has begun. But this time you did not choose to play. The choice was made for you by a clever woman with a piece of ancient stone and a powerful command of verse. The new correspondence blossoms with an astonishing speed. This new lady, whose name you learn as Eyes, is your intellectual equal. Her poems are witty, her allusions are clever, and her taste is impeccable but unconventional. The courtship proceeds along the familiar lines, exchanges of scented letters, gifts of seasonal branches, but it feels different. There is less posturing and more genuine connection. After only a few weeks of this intense poetic exchange, she sends the invitation you are now coming to recognize a formal night visit. But this is not just any visit. You know, and she knows, what is at stake. The ghost of your previous, failed courtship looms large. This new relationship needs to be solidified, made official in the eyes of the courtant, more importantly, in the eyes of her family. To do this, you must successfully complete the ritual known as the 3- night visit. This is a cornerstone of Heian marriage customs. A man's occasional night visits were one thing, but if he visited the same woman on 3 consecutive nights and was accepted each time, it was considered a de facto declaration of intent. It was the unofficial engagement. After the 3rd night, the relationship would be publicly acknowledged, and the woman's family would begin preparations for the formal wedding ceremonies. To complete the 3 nights was to be bound. To start the process and fail to complete it either by your own choice or by being rejected on the 2nd or 3rd night would be a public humiliation for both parties. The 1st night is much like your first visit with the previous lady, but the conversation flows more easily. You and I talk for hours, your voices weaving through the silk screen that separates you. You speak of Chinese philosophy, a topic your last parima would have found dull. Eyes, the scholar's daughter, parries your every point with a sharp insight of her own. You leave before dawn, your mind buzzing with excitement, and immediately send the requisite morning minus after letter. Her reply is swift and warm. The first trial is past. The 2nd night, the pressure mounts. This is no longer a novelty. This is a pattern. The entire household is aware of what is happening. As you are escorted to her rooms, you feel the weight of their expectations. The conversation this night is more personal. You speak of your childhoods, your ambitions. You are no longer just 2 minds meeting, you are 2 histories intertwining. You feel a genuine, powerful affection for this unseen woman. The departure at dawn is even more sorrowful than the first. The 2nd morning minus after letter is sent, the 2nd reply received. You are 2 minus thirds of the way there. Now comes the 3rd night, the most critical of all. The entire affair hinges on this visit. If you are accepted tonight, your future is set. If you are turned away at the gate, it means she or her family has had a last-minute change of heart, a devastating public rejection. As you approach her residence, your own heart is pounding. The gates open. You are ushered in. The relief is immense. This brings us to a wonderfully specific and symbolic part of the 3rd minus night ritual. The Tokoro minus Oro was high, or revelation of the place. After the 3rd night, the man would often be invited to share a meal of rice cakes with the lady's family. This was the moment he would finally meet her parents, particularly her father. It was also often the first time he would be allowed to see his beloved's face in the light of day. The screens would, at last, be set aside. The 3rd night's conversation is the deepest yet. You feel as though you know the very soul of this woman, though you have never seen her smile or met her gaze. As dawn approaches, the familiar sadness of parting is mixed with a new, thrilling anticipation. You walk the misty path home, and send your 3rd and final morning minus after letter. The historical debate surrounding the 3 minus night visit concerns its binding power. Was it a legally binding contract? Not exactly. Heian society didn't have the same concept of legal marriage contracts as in the West. The marriage was a social fact established by public recognition and the man's continued support of the woman. However, the completion of the 3 minus night ritual was a powerful social contract. A man who completed it and the woman would be seen as a dishonorable cad, his reputation permanently stained. A family who allowed a man to complete it and then rejected him would be seen as fickle and untrustworthy. It was not law, but it was powerful custom. Later that day, 2 things arrive. The first is her reply, a poem of exquisite joy and relief. The second is a formal invitation delivered by her father's steward. You are invited to the residence that evening, not for a clandestine meeting in the dark, but for a formal introduction to her father. The test is over. You have passed. You have navigated the poems, the gifts, the rivalries, and the rejections. You have successfully courted a woman behind a screen, and her family has deemed you worthy. The long, frustrating, beautiful, and awkward journey of non-minus verbal seduction is at an end. You have won her heart and her mind. Now all that is left is to finally, after all this time, see her face. The invitation to meet her father marks the end of one journey and the beginning of another. The shadowy, poetic world of courtship is about to give way to the brightly lit, formal world of family alliance. This is no longer about winning a lady's heart, it's about securing her family's approval. The meeting with your prospective father minus in minus law is the final gate, and it is perhaps the most daunting of all. You spend the day in a state of quiet panic. This is not a test of your poetic sensibility, but of your character, your political prospects, and your ability to conduct yourself as a serious adult. You choose your robes with extreme care. They must be formal, but not ostentatious. You select a dark, sober color, projecting an image of maturity and seriousness. Your attendants fuss over every fold and tuck. You must look like a man capable of running a household and upholding a family name. As evening falls, you make your way to her residence. This time there is no secrecy. You are greeted at the main gate by her father's chief steward and formally announced. You are not led to her private wing, but to the main hall, the formal reception room used for important guests. The room is brightly lit with several standing lanterns. There are no screens to hide behind. The space feels vast and exposed. Her father is seated on a raised platform at the far end of the room. He is an older man with a thin, intelligent face and eyes that seem to see everything. He is, as you know, a respected scholar, a man who values books over battles. As you approach and perform the deep, formal bow of respect, you know he is not assessing your wealth or your physical prowess. He is assessing your mind. You are invited to sit, and a tense silence descends. This is the moment where, traditionally, the suitor presents formal gifts to the family. You have prepared them carefully a set of rare, beautifully copied scrolls of Chinese poetry for her father, and a bolt of exquisite, imported silk for her mother. The gifts are accepted with a quiet nod. The first hurdle is cleared. Then the interview begins. He does not ask about your feelings for his daughter. That is assumed. Instead, he asks you about your studies. He quizzes you on a difficult passage from the Chinese classics. He brings up a recent, complex point of court etiquette and asks for your opinion. It is an oral examination, and the subject is your own fitness to be a member of his family. He is testing your education, your intellect, and your grasp of the subtleties of your world. This brings us to a specific and crucial part of the Heian marriage process, the role of the bride's father. While the mother and the ladies of the household managed the internal, social side of the courtship, the father held the ultimate veto power. His concerns were primarily practical and political. Will this match enhance our family standing? Is this young man from a stable, influential family? Does he have a promising career at court? A father could, and often did, overrule a daughter's affections if the suitor was deemed unsuitable for strategic reasons. Your previous failed courtship was a testament to this paternal power. You answer his questions as best you can, your mind racing. You draw on every bit of your education, every lesson from your tutors. Thankfully, your new love for his daughter eyes has inspired you to spend more time with books and less time on frivolous pursuits. You are better prepared than you would have been a few months ago. The conversation flows, moving from literature to politics to the proper way to appreciate the phases of the moon. You feel less like you are being interrogated and more like you are having a genuine, high-level academic discussion. Finally, he falls silent. He studies you for a long, uncomfortable moment. You hold your breath. Then he says, "My daughter has chosen well. She has a mind for poetry, but she requires a husband with a mind for the world. I believe you have both." A wave of relief washes over you. You have passed. You have his approval. He then claps his hands and a side door opens. A lady in waiting enters, followed by a figure who is so radiant that for a moment you forget to breathe. It is her eyes. Her face, which you have spent months imagining, is finally before you. She is as beautiful as you had dreamed, but it's her eyes that capture you. They are bright, intelligent, and full of the same which you have come to know through her poetry. She does not look at you directly, that would be too forward, but you see a small, happy smile play on her lips. The shadow on the screen has become a breathtaking reality. The historical debate here concerns the first meeting of the couple. While literature loves the drama of the big reveal after the father's approval, some historians argue that in many cases, the couple may have already seen each other in a limited way. They might have caught more substantial glimpses at festivals than the romanticized versions suggest, or a particularly daring couple might have found a way to bend the rules. However, the formality of the first sanctioned, face-to-face meeting in front of the family was a crucial and non-negotiable step. It was the moment the relationship moved from the private and poetic to the public and official. You are invited to share a meal of celebratory rice cakes and steak with her and her father. The conversation is more relaxed now, the tension broken. You are no longer a suitor on trial. You are family. The long, strange, and beautiful ordeal is over. You have navigated the screams, the poems, the perfumes, and the politics. You have found a partner not just of the heart, but of the mind. The meeting with her father was the climax of the courtship. But now you must face the denouement on the political reality of your union. Your marriage to eyes is not just the joining of two people, it is the merging of two families, two fortunes, and two futures. The poetry and clandestine visits give way to negotiations and strategic planning. The romance was the art, the marriage is the business. In the weeks following your formal acceptance, the machinery of the Heian aristocracy grinds into motion. Messengers are now constantly shuttling between your two households, but they are no longer carrying love and poems. They are carrying lists, contracts, and schedules. Your father and her father meet several times, their conversations revolving around dowries, property, and political appointments. The main consideration is how this marriage will benefit both families. Your family has a solid, if not spectacular, political standing and a good name at court. Her family is less politically ambitious but possesses a great deal of cultural capital. Her father's scholarly reputation is a valuable asset. Your marriage is seen as a perfect blend, your political connections combined with her family's intellectual prestige. Together, you are a more powerful unit than you were apart. This is the fundamental purpose of marriage in your class. It is a strategic alliance, and love is simply the happy lubricant that makes the machine run smoothly. You must now prepare your new home. In Heian society, it was common for the husband to move into the wife's family residence, or for her family to provide a new home for the couple. This matrilocal arrangement gave the wife's family a great deal of influence over the new household. In your case, a compromise is reached. A small estate bordering both of your family's properties is chosen, a neutral ground that will become your new domain. Architects are consulted, builders are hired, and the construction of your future life begins. This brings us to a specific and rather unromantic aspect of Heian marriage, the exchange of gifts. This wasn't just a matter of wedding presents. It was a formal, public demonstration of wealth and commitment. Your family sends a vast array of gifts to hers, bolts of silk, fine furniture, rare books, horses, and even swords. Her family reciprocates with gifts of their own, often things of great artistic or cultural value, like prized inkstones, ancient zithers, or paintings by famous artists. The exchange is meticulously catalogued and becomes a topic of court gossip. The quality and quantity of the gifts are a public statement about the importance of the match. While all this is happening, your personal interactions with eyes are now more open, yet still governed by a complex etiquette. You may visit her more freely, but always with chaperones present. You might sit on the same veranda, separated by only a few feet, and admire the garden together. You can now speak without a screen between you, but your conversations are more subdued, more conscious of the family members who might be listening. The thrilling secrecy of the courtship is gone, replaced by the pleasant but less exciting reality of an approved union. The historical debate among social historians is about the true nature of power within a Heian marriage. On paper, it was a patriarchal society. The man was the head of the household. However, the laws of the time gave aristocratic women significant rights. A woman could inherit and own property independently of her husband. She had a great deal of control over her own household and children. The matrilocal living arrangements also meant that she was constantly surrounded by her own kin, giving her a powerful support network. Some scholars argue that high-ranking Heian women were among the most empowered women in the pre-modern world. The marriage was less a case of a woman being given to a man, and more a negotiation between two powerful, property-owning families. One afternoon, you and Eyes are sitting together, watching the final touches being put on your new home. She turns to you, her face serious. "My father is pleased with the match," she says quietly. "He believes your uncle's recent promotion at the Ministry of Ceremonies will be a great benefit to us." It's a stark reminder of the reality of your situation. Your love, which felt so personal and unique, is also a political asset. Her affection for you is intertwined with her duty to her family. Your uncle's career move, something you barely paid attention to, was a key factor in her father's approval. You realize that you were not just chosen by her, but for her. You look at eyes, her intelligent eyes watching you, and you feel a new kind of affection. It's not the feverish, poetic longing of the courtship, but a calmer, more solid feeling. It is a partnership. You are a team, allied against the shifting tides of court politics. The romance was a beautiful dream. The marriage is the reality, a complex web of duty, politics, and, if you are lucky, a deep and abiding love that can weather it all. You have her heart, but you have also married her family's ambitions. The wedding ceremony is a grand, elaborate affair, a multi-day spectacle of rituals, feasts, and poetry. It solidifies your union in the eyes of the entire court. You are now husband and wife. You move into your new home, a beautiful residence, filled with the finest furniture and art that your combined families could provide. The long, agonizing courtship is over. You have won. But as you settle into your new life, you discover a surprising truth: the screen, in many ways, still exists. Your life together is not one of constant, casual intimacy. The highly structured and ritualized nature of your courtship has laid the foundation for a married life that is equally structured and ritualized. You and I have separate quarters within the same residence. You have your own attendants, and she has hers. While you may now see each other freely, your time together is often scheduled, built around meals, formal events, or planned artistic pursuits like playing music or composing poetry together. The casual, pajama-clad breakfast of a modern couple is unthinkable. Every time you meet, you are both expected to be properly attired, composed, and ready to engage in a certain level of formal politeness. The unfiltered self is still kept largely private. The performance of being an elegant, refined couple continues long after the wedding. One evening, you are sitting together on the veranda, watching the fireflies begin to glow in the garden. It is a peaceful, domestic scene, but you notice that Eyes is still using her phone to partially shield her face when she speaks, a habit ingrained from a lifetime of being observed from behind screens. You still find yourself announcing your approach to her chambers rather than simply walking in. The invisible architecture of the courtship, the barriers, the formal gestures, the carefully chosen words remains as a kind of psychological furniture in your marriage. This brings us to a specific and fascinating aspect of Heian marital life, the concept of conjugal visits. Even within a marriage, the husband would often visit the wife in her chambers at night, much like he did during the courtship. The idea of a shared marital bed in the modern sense was not always the norm. The relationship maintained a certain dynamic of visitor and host, which preserved a degree of personal space and formality for both parties. This preserved a sliver of the romantic tension and novelty of the courtship phase within the routine of married life. You also learn that marriage does not mean an end to correspondence. You and I often exchange short notes during the day, even though you live in the same house. If you are called away on official business for a few hours, you will send her a short poem. If she creates a particularly beautiful flower arrangement, she will send an attendant to your rooms with a note, inviting you to come and see it. These small, constant acts of written communication are the threads that hold the tapestry of your relationship together. They are a continuation of the language you first used to fall in love. The historical debate here centers on the emotional quality of these aristocratic marriages. Were they cold, formal arrangements, or were they capable of deep, passionate love? The evidence points to a wide spectrum. Many marriages were, indeed, primarily political alliances, and husbands often had multiple wives or consorts, leading to complex and sometimes painful household dynamics. However, the literature is also filled with examples of profound, monogamous love. The Diary of Murasaki Shikibu, for instance, expresses deep and genuine grief over the death of her husband. Many historians argue that the very formality and distance built into the marriage structure could, paradoxically, allow for a more idealized and romanticized love to flourish. By not being confronted with the constant, mundane realities of a partner, the couple could maintain a certain poetic image of each other. One day, Eyes shows you a poem she has just composed. It compares your marriage to two ancient pine trees on a cliffside. They do not touch, their branches do not intertwine, but their roots are deeply and inextricably tangled together beneath the soil. You read the poem and understand completely. Your marriage is not one of constant clinging embrace. It is a relationship of respectful distance and profound, unseen connection. The screen that once stood between you was a physical object of silk and wood. Now it is a more subtle barrier of etiquette and habit. But it is not a wall that divides you. Instead, it is the frame that gives your life together its unique shape, its quiet dignity, and its enduring poetic beauty. You learn it to love her through a screen, and in many ways, you will continue to do so for the rest of your lives. Years have passed. The sleek black hair of your youth is now flecked with silver. Your children, a son who shows a talent for the flute, a daughter with your wife's brilliant eyes and poetic wit are now beginning their own awkward, beautiful courtships. You are no longer a junior courtier trying to make a name for himself, but a respected minister, a man of substance and influence. Your life with Eyes has settled into a comfortable, elegant rhythm, a long, unfolding poem written in shared seasons. You sit on the samver, and where you once sat as a nervous, newly minus-approved suitor, Eyes is beside you, no longer hiding behind a fan, but meeting your gaze with a familiar, easy affection. The garden before you is a landscape of memories. You see the willow tree and remember hiding behind one just like it, desperate for a glimpse of a sleeve. You see the cherry blossoms and remember the terror and excitement of sending that first letter, tied to a trembling branch. You hear the cry of a deer from the distant hills and remember weaving that sound into a poem of longing. Your entire life, your entire love story, is written in the language of this garden. You look back on that strange, convoluted process of your courtship and can't help but smile. All that anxiety, all that excruciating attention to detail, all that poetry and perfume, it seems both absurd and profoundly meaningful. Could you have simply met, talked, and fallen in love like people in some other, less complicated world? But you wouldn't have this. You wouldn't have this shared history, this secret language of layered colors and seasonal flowers. Your relationship was not built on first impressions or physical attraction. It was built on a foundation of pure text, of art, of a carefully constructed intellectual and emotional sympathy. You fell in love with her mind before you ever saw her face. You were captivated by her taste before you ever heard her laugh. It was a romance in reverse, an intimacy built from the soul outwards. This brings us to one final, overarching reflection on the Heian way of love. Was it hopelessly repressed and ridiculously complicated? From a modern perspective, absolutely. But it also possessed a unique kind of romantic depth. By placing so many barriers between lovers, the culture forced them to be more creative, more articulate, and more attentive. You couldn't rely on a charming smile or a physical gesture. You had to rely on the quality of your thoughts, the beauty of your words. It was a system that elevated taste and sensitivity to the highest virtues. It demanded that you prove not that you were handsome or rich, but that you had a beautiful soul. You watch as your daughter, from behind a screen on her own veranda, shows the sleeve of her new kimono to a young man pretending to admire the chrysanthemums below. The ancient dance is beginning all over again. You see the young man's nervousness, his carefully feigned nonchalance, and you feel a pang of sympathy and nostalgia. He has no idea what he is in for. The historical debate that will likely never be settled is whether this system produced better or worse relationships than our own. It's an unanswerable question. Historians can only point out the differences. The Heian system prioritized aesthetic and intellectual harmony, often at the expense of personal freedom and spontaneity. Our modern systems often prioritize personal chemistry and individual choice, sometimes at the expense of deeper shared cultural and intellectual bonds. It is simply a different way of solving the eternal human problem of finding a partner. There is no right answer, only a different set of rules for the same complicated game. Eyes touches your hand. You look pensive, she says, her voice the same one that once captivated you from the other side of a silk screen. I was just thinking, you reply, about a poem and a wilted flower, sent on a misty morning long ago. She smiles a real, open smile that still makes your heart feel like a young man's. The poem was good, she says, but the flower was a bit much. You both laugh. A warm, easy sound that fills the autumn air. The scream is gone. The game is over. You have won the grand prize, which was not her hand in marriage, but a lifetime of moments just like this. And so our long, strange journey through time comes to a soft and quiet close. The lanterns in the Heian capital have flickered out, one by one, leaving only the silver light of the moon on the raked gravel gardens. The last lines of poetry have been whispered, the final scent of incense has faded into the cool night air. You can let it all go now. Feel the story gently drifting away, like a boat unmooring from the shore, sailing out onto a calm, dark sea. The characters, the colors, the anxieties of the court, they are all becoming part of the quiet tapestry of your own dreaming mind. There are no more letters to write, no more replies to wait for. There is only peace. Let the rhythm of your own breathing be the only sound you hear. A soft, steady tide, pulling you further and further away from the waking world. You are floating now in that gentle space between the story and the dream. Every breath in is calm, and every breath out is release. Feel the weight of the day melting away. Feel the tension in your shoulders and your jaw simply dissolving into the darkness. You are safe. You are comfortable. And you are deeply, deeply at peace. The night is here to hold you. Sleep now. The end of the article. Good night.